Call, please.
Mayor Canos.
Here.
Mr. Donahue is absent. Mr. Hammond.
Very low.
Mr. Hammond. He's
here.
Here.
Can you hit? You can't hear me?
I'm sorry. I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. McCready.
Here.
Mr. McQueen.
Here.
Mr. O'Day.
Here.
Ms. Zamara.
Here.
Okay. Notice of this meeting was provided to the Bernardsville News, the Courier News, and the Star Ledger, filed with the municipal clerk and posted on the municipal bulletin board on January 3rd, 2020. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Got my flag. Okay. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic
which stands
one nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. My flag's back. Tonight we have a presentation from Stuart Coper-Weiss of Economic Development Strategies, who, if you recall, last week we talked about a feasibility study to see if we are interested or if our businesses are interested in an improvement district to help support the downtown. So I saw, he was here, I saw.
Yeah, he's here. I unmuted him.
Okay, so Stuart, I will turn this over to you so you can kind of give us an overview of what an improvement district is or isn't.
Right. Well, thank you. Good evening, council members, mayor.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here in front of you and look forward to answering any questions you have at the end. I did put together a quick presentation, a couple of slides that may be able to help us understand a little bit more about an improvement district, what it's intended to do, the mechanisms that it utilizes and how it was created and how they are created. And of course, I have a quick Q&A program as well, and we can go through that. So I believe I am allowed to share my screen. So with that, if that's okay with everybody, I will do that right now. And if you have any questions throughout, I guess I'll let the mayor figure out how that'll work out. All right, if not, we can hold them till the end, but that's fine with me. All right, I look forward to it, and thank you again for the opportunity. So is everybody looking at my screen right now?
Yes, I see it. Everybody see it? Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Fantastic. So a special improvement district. Usually I would say by the raise of hands, but you know, it's a little difficult to do that. But how many are you familiar with improvement districts? Basically, it is thank you, Councilman. It is, I've been involved with improvement districts for more than 25 years, working with governments. I helped put together and been involved with 35 plus improvement districts in New York and New Jersey, and worked with them to put together over $90 million in grants and fundings for different projects throughout the state. There's more than 100 improvement districts in the state of New Jersey, and right now there's more than 1,000 of them in the country, and there's more and more across the world. So what is an improvement district? Well, in New Jersey, as you all know, we are very special. So everywhere in the world, improvement districts are called business improvement districts, except for New Jersey because we're special. So they're called special improvement districts. So that's why they're known as SIDs as opposed to BIDs, which is the nomenclature known throughout the world. But in New Jersey, we will call them SIDs. It's a public-private partnership. It's modeled on shared maintenance services similar to a mall. And what I mean by that is that it's basically a mall has multiple tenants inside of the improvement district, in the mall themselves. However, an improvement district works very similar to that, except it's multiple tenants, multiple property owners as opposed to one property owner. So it's sort of like a mall without walls. And as I mentioned, there are over 90 or it's close to 100 now and 1,000 in the United States. Some of the advantages is that it's a cleaner, more attractive business area, steady, reliable funding source. And that's critical in terms of what you're trying to do in terms of economic revitalization and growth. It actually responds quickly to changing needs of the business community. Today, with the COVID crisis, the improvement districts are very much more in demand than ever before. Those municipalities that have improvement districts have been able to change on a dime and move their programming from oriented, if you will, to project oriented to help support businesses. Some of the things that we've been doing in other towns and other improvement districts have been doing is being able to take the dollars that they had set aside for events and put them into purchasing gift cards from businesses and restaurateurs, and now putting together retail promotions on 40% discounts, and then utilizing the differences that made up by the improvement districts themselves, and they're paying for those. An improvement district is not a merchants association. Again, I mentioned that it provides a steady source of income. It's a legislation. Everybody's included. A merchants association does not have the continuous source of income, and it can't enforce the financial bearings of the participants once they are approved. Since a municipality uses the instrumentality of their funding mechanism, which is the ordinance and itself, and it's part of the actual assessment structure within the government, and consequently all the improvements, all of the funding that comes from the improvement district, those property owners must pay into it. Otherwise, their property, just like an assessment or any other assessment, would be put on lien, and then eventually would have to pay off that lien. So it is a mandatory contribution. What does it do? This is a very interesting thing, because what it does is that there are about 10 or 12 different items specifically that are associated to me. There are about 17 different items specifically stated in the statute. However, what we're looking to do is look at the 10-foot view of it, which is basically look in front of yourself, look straight ahead, look up 10 feet, look around 10 feet, and what are you trying to do is make it a more safe and convenient shopping corridor. So we do maintenance, street and sidewalk cleaning, graffiti removal, hospitality, police, security, visitor assistance. I don't want to read them all, but business development, marketing, capital improvements, and landscaping, and also community services and working with the community. Will municipal services be reduced? And I see, as you can see, it's no, no, and no. The services provided by the improvement district are supplemental to whatever services are provided by the municipality. They're there to enhance those services. Right now, I'm working with a variety of municipalities to put together sanitation services and programs. They still receive the same level of service of sanitation services that they would from the municipality. However, this is an enhancement on top of that, and we supplement that as well. How are services paid for? The funds are generated from a special assessment, as I mentioned earlier. The bills go out and they're collected by the government. That's what makes it so mandatory. The annual assessment is unique to each improvement district. It's depending upon the budget, and that budget is created by the District Management Corporation, which is the non-for-profit organization that operates the improvement district itself. Those are all, they range in size anywhere from $100,000, if you will, to over $1 million, depending upon the size of the district itself. Each property owner determines the formula that each SID creates. The amount paid is by each particular property owner. Some pay more in certain areas, some pay less in other areas. Formulas usually are based upon property size, value, and they're determined by the formulation process, which is also given to you as the governing body in terms of the recommendation by the steering committee, which is what the feasibility study is all about. The feasibility study itself is here to determine whether or not an improvement district is the best mechanism to create economic revitalization and growth. It's formed by the support requires of the property and business owners in the district. It's created when there's widespread information support, and there are several phases, that are involved with the formation. The planning is the first one, and that's part of the steering committee's organization. Then it's the outreach, and then it's the recommendation by the steering committee as to whether or not they should or should not create a improvement district. And that then is done by legislative authorization through an ordinance and a public hearing. The improvement district is run by a board of trustees, as I mentioned earlier. It can be divided into a variety of different classes. One of the things is that usually a majority of the trustees should be property owners, and a member of the governing body must be on the District Management Corporation and the board of trustees. It's managed by a district management corporation, as is noted, and usually they hire an administrator to handle the day-to-day operations of the improvement district. I always like to talk about the fact that what's the role of an improvement district is to coordinate services, liaison between government, act as the assist in redevelopment and provide value to the businesses. One of the things that we need to understand, or at least to try to work with businesses, is that property owners are looking to work to make sure that their property covers their debt service. The retailers are looking for more consumer traffic and more profits. The shoppers are looking for goods and services, and the main street is inviting the shopping area. The key element here is that municipalities control two things, and that is basically the land that's within the municipality and the rateables, but the zoning determines the uses. So what we're looking to do here is work with the municipality and zoning and making sure that we're all in coherent and in concert with each other to create economic revitalization. And then lastly, we capitalize service programs, brick and mortar, make corridors a destination using marketing, encourage participation by a variety of different sources, enlist community support as well, and then finally revitalize the community. So what is the actual end of the conversation with improvement districts? Well, right now, I think what we have to recognize is that, the Brookings Institute noted that 83% of households by 2025 will be childless. So the reality is that where are these people going and what are people doing? And they're looking for, right now, the Gen Y generation, wants transit and lifestyle. And an improvement district is probably one of the most qualified mechanisms to encourage local property and business owners to improve the district. The key here is it is a self-determination issue. As I mentioned before, it's a mall without walls, but everybody has a say. And it makes it possible for property owners to control their future destiny. These are some of the services that improvement districts have done. I've been involved in Jersey City for many, many years when I first started there 25 plus years ago. And that's the end of my quick presentation. So I try to keep it brief because I understand you have a lot on your agenda nonetheless. So I'm open for any questions, and Mayor, I leave that up to you.
Stuart, would you also talk about what the feasibility study would look like? Because I think you had given us a proposal for doing that, so maybe just go through what that involves.
Yes. I'm going to go back very quickly here. I had mentioned to you earlier that it's planning, outreach, and et cetera. So a feasibility study, very quickly, it basically talks about whether or not it is feasible to create an improvement district. So the study itself is basically looking at whether or not it's working with a group of merchants and property owners to lead the effort in terms of determining, what it is that the community is looking for. What is Bernardsville actually looking to do? Then it determines whether or not there's sufficient retail and commercial area to support the improvement district. And then it develops a consensus among the merchants and property owners as to whether or not an improvement district actually can achieve these objectives. So the first thing you would do is, as a steering committee, is look at and list. We would do surveys amongst ourselves, and then we would list all the things we want to accomplish, and then make a determination as to what that would actually cost. And then from that determination, we would look at how we can actually accomplish those things within the district itself, and we would create boundaries and whatnot. The goal is to whether or not we want to create an improvement district. So the first thing we look at is examining the existing conditions. Then we would put together a plan to make sure that that plan meets all those things, and then we would prepare the study itself. So creating a feasibility study does not mean that you're actually creating an improvement district. What it does mean is that it's giving you the opportunity to look at other options in terms of economic growth and revitalization as to whether or not this is something that Bernardsville would like to be able to achieve. And if they are looking to do that, then they would create the second step, which is an organizational structure to put it together, make a recommendation to the governing body in order to do that, and then they would hold public hearings. In the process, there would be a series of public hearings that would work with them in terms of the stakeholders to look at the feasibility of creating the improvement district. Did that work?
Yeah.
Stuart,
Yeah.
and so in this, I mean, talk to me about the tools that so what percentage of business owners would you speak to? Be a little granular here because it's not a small amount of money. What would you do? What steps would you take specifically? Who would you speak to? How does this work? How long does it take?
Sure. So the first thing we would do is put together the steering committee, which would be made up of representatives from, as I mentioned, the governing body, the civic organizations, whether it be downtown Bernardsville, that organizational structure, and other individuals that you believe, property owners that are important to the downtown themselves. That group usually runs anywhere between 10 to 15, 16 people. We would meet on a regular basis, usually bi-monthly, and we would handle all the objectives and work through the whole process. In the process of doing that, we would be putting together what we believe, the steering committee believed, would be the most beneficial options for the improvement district by creating a mission, objectives, and goals. And then we would take that and we would bring that out to the stakeholders, and we would hold a stakeholder meeting by mailing out and visiting the businesses themselves and the property owners and asking them for their input based upon the presentation that we would make. The presentation itself would take place by the steering committee themselves. Each person would have a role on the steering committee for the presentation, and I would be there guiding that and handling any questions on technical issues as well. The process itself can take anywhere from 6 to 10 months, depending upon how frequently everybody would like to meet. If there's a second phase, which means that you would want to continue with the process and create the improvement district, like creating the the district management corporation, the board of directors, bylaws, and introducing the first budget, that can take anywhere from another 3 to 4 months. That process could be shortened a little bit depending upon the organizational structure that's already in existence and the relationship with downtown Bernardsville, if that is the group of organization and the 501c3 that people would like to be able to utilize.
What is the, well, along the lines of that same question, if I could just follow up, is there a critical mass when you said that the feasibility study would look at whether there was sufficient retail? So what's the critical mass of retail or of stores that vendors that is required to make this successful?
Great question. It's retail, but it's also the property owners themselves. So it's the property owners who actually are paying the assessment, and sometimes they pass it along to the businesses which own or the tenants of those properties. So what's the critical mass? Critical mass becomes an issue of whether or not, if your budget is $100,000 and you only have 10 people, okay, is it feasible for $10,000 to be assessed per property? Obviously not. So then the question becomes, all right, if we have a $100,000 budget, how many properties are necessary in order to be included in that improvement district to spread the assessment equitably across all without creating a hardship? That number needs to be determined based upon the actual budget itself and looking at it. Some towns, as I mentioned earlier, have $1 million budget. The average budget is about $300,000, and the size of the improvement district can range anywhere from about 100 properties to over 1,000 properties. Again, it all depends on what it is that your objective is in terms of the amount of things that you want to deliver. So it could be as little, quite frankly, as 50, 70 properties. Depending upon the budget, or it could be as much as, like I said, over 1,000 properties, and depending upon how high the budget is. I mean, in one town, there's about 1,300 property owners that are associated with it, and the budget is over $1 million.
Well, so along those lines, is there a lifespan to these? Do they go on forever once you create one? And if so, if not, you've talked about your successes. Have there been any that fail?
Great questions again. Is there a lifespan? There is no lifespan. Every year, the budget has to go in front of the governing body to be approved. So at any particular point in time, the governing body can say, well, we're not going to approve the budget. Are there successes? Yes. Are there failures? Yes. There's been a few failures. Some of them, quite frankly, I know have to do with once the relationship between the governing body and the improvement district and district management corporation gets to a deteriorating perspective and point of view, usually that improvement district is no longer successful. And all of the ones that I have been able to put together, only 2 so far have I recommended not to create an improvement district. And the reason for that is that because one was, well, politics. It basically has to do with politics. It becomes a political football. And once the improvement district becomes political, it really cannot function as a private not-for-profit corporation. Did I answer that successfully?
Oh, yes, yes. But what can you go on a little bit more detail about the relationship between the special improvement district and the borough? So, for example, you mentioned that one of the functions of the manager, the not-for-profit group, would be to think about zoning. Are they independent of the borough? Can they create their own zoning rules that supersede the borough zoning?
Absolutely not. Everything is in partnership. So the key here is whether or not, the zoning officer controls and rules everything through the governing body. So sometimes what happens is that the improvement district acts as the advocate for different property owners and businesses trying to work with changing zoning laws that help the businesses and the property owners grow and revitalize. So everything is done through the governing body, but the improvement district again acts as the liaison in order to make that happen.
Okay, thank you.
How do these types of things work in our borough? We have a downtown district. We also have other secondary districts which have more mixed use. How does it work in regards to areas that may have mixed residential within them, in regards to if there ever was an assessment, how that would work? Right.
So each area it all depends on whether or not that particular area, in terms of mixed residential, what that mixed residential consists of. Is it commercial residential, meaning apartment complexes that are for profit organization, or is it single 1-2 family homes or condominiums? So those are not included. So the question becomes, do you want to create a district that runs from point A over here with residential in between that's not going to be utilized, and then another commercial district over here, which only has 10 properties? Does it make sense to connect those dots? That's something that the organization would have to look at. And most likely, from a physical perspective of delivering services, it probably doesn't make sense to include all of it. But you would have to determine that. And then sometimes, because you have a central business district versus outlining areas, that maybe the central business district is assessed at a higher rate than the outlining areas. In one town that I'm working with right now, we actually have 6 different sub areas and assessment levels. In a town like ours, it's relatively small. What, in your opinion, what is the smallest amount of revenue? Where's the break point where it can't be successful? You're essentially choking it off. So you mentioned $100,000 a couple times. What is the small end where these become successcul? Well, or not? That's or not is the great question. Because the reality, I was in Netcon, a small town, very similar, a small village. Their budget there, I believe, initially was about under $80,000 or something of that nature. So they were working together with the municipality and trying to put it together. And eventually it really decided not to be feasible, because at the end of the day, if you can't create anything and deliver services beyond what the municipality is doing in terms of marketing, in terms of cleanliness, sanitation, and retail programs, then it doesn't make any sense to do it. You can put together retail programs very simply, for a couple of $1,000s to help, and a management team, still again, depending upon the services, working with the government. I think a $75,000 to $100,000 budget is the bare minimum. Once you start going over that, again, it depends upon the delivery of the services that the steering committee is recommending. If they want to do a lot of things, they're going to have a reasonable budget. But is that reasonable budget a palatable number that the businesses and property owners can feel comfortable in assessing?
I think, to the question that Councilman McQueen's getting at is, I assume you've seen our town, the size of our town. Are we on the low end of what your experience has been in terms of the size of our current business district? Are we in the mid range, or where will we fall in terms of the size?
I would say that you're on the lower end of the sizing in terms of a smaller district. Not, I would say between the low end and the mid end.
Okay. So two questions, and one was that you talked about doing a feasibility study, and a feasibility study would come up with whether or not it would work.
Right.
So if we're investing, it looks like $48,000 in the project to do the feasibility study. How often do you come up with what's just not going to work for you guys for whatever reason? And if that were to be the answer, how frequently in the past has that been your answer when you've looked at feasibility studies before? Question number one. Question number two, well, if we get down that path and we spent $48,000 to determine that this isn't going to work, well, then what do we do? Is there an alternative so that the $48,000 isn't spent on just saying no?
Right. Good question. First of all, let me just state that the feasibility study and the proposal is broken down into two phases. One is the actual outreach and making the determination as to the feasibility of the improvement district, which is $36,000.
32.
32, excuse me. Thank you very much. There. Okay. You know my
So
number.
it's 32, but so you would stop at that point is what you're saying?
Correct.
So my real interest is in the past when you've begun these feasibility studies, how many times have you stopped after that first phase and said, it's just not going to work?
Twice. Only 2 times out of about 30 some odd times that I've done this.
And those 2 times, it was for political reasons, or was because of a size concern or a revenue concern?
Never the size of the revenue. It really only had to do with the politics of the nature of those particular municipalities. One municipality, they wanted to be the governing body actually wanted to control the improvement district themselves, which the steering committee was very uncomfortable with, and therefore they decided not to make the recommendation. And the other one had to do with the fact that, as I mentioned to the mayor and others, is that there's always naysayers in everything that you're going to do. You're never going to get 100% buy-in. And my philosophy is that, if 50 plus 1 people rule, that's great, but it doesn't make 49 and less wrong. So what we're looking for is a majority of individuals to be able to coalesce around the feasibility study and make it work. So that's what happens sometimes when the politics get involved and people are looking at it for their own personal reasons. And that's
great, Stuart. So one follow-up question then, and this one I think goes to your point that you just alluded to now, is that you said something like this requires support. So can you talk to me about whose support? I mean, obviously the support, you need enough votes to vote it through. That's goes without saying. But when you say require support, my feeling was that you were talking about it requires supports from the merchants themselves or the property owners. And if so, how does their support garnered? And what are we're saying that, we would only do it because they like the idea? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, yes. It really comes down to garnering their support is based upon the steering committee going one-on-one and also holding stakeholder meetings with the property owners and merchants to get their input, recognizing, as I mentioned earlier, that several people are going to be against it no matter what. So we understand that. Then it's up to the council to recognize, based upon the input of their constituents, as to whether or not they feel comfortable in moving forward with this themselves. So that's, you're the boots on the ground with your constituents. You're the ones who are going to be able to ascertain what's best for your community. And then you would work with the steering committee and their recommendation and work with that. So again, one of the individuals from your organization, from the council, should be on the steering committee, if not 2 individuals, so we can get a good representation and then feedback from the balance of the stakeholders.
So my estimation from what you're saying then is that it requires support of the property owners and the merchants to be successful. And obviously we wouldn't want to do it if it's not going to be successful. It doesn't require their support to actually execute it. I mean, we could do that by voting as a council to create a district, but it's not likely to be successful if we try and do something like that without support.
Correct. There is no mandatory statutory obligation to create a majority vote of all stakeholders on the organization as to whether or not it should be created. That's left entirely up to the governing body to make that determination and vote. The whole idea of input is from the stakeholders is to make sure that the council feels comfortable and the governing body feels comfortable in making the recommendation and approving the improvement district. I was just in one town where, you know, one of the council members was dead set against it, and no matter what you could do, he was going to vote against it. There was nothing else about it. The other council members were supportive of it. Were there people who were against it in the audience and as part of stakeholders? Yes, but a majority of the individuals involved were very supportive of moving forward with that as a mechanism to create economic growth and revitalization. And after you're in it for the first year, then you can make a determination, well, is it making sense? Is it not making sense? Is it helping? Is it living up to its objectives and mission? And if it is, great, let's continue the funding. If it isn't, let's stop it right now.
Okay.
Most improvement.
So at any point, you can terminate it if
I mean, at any point, the improvement district without a budget cannot operate unless it's, you know, I was in another town doing a consulting work here, and they said, well, we want to stop funding the improvement district. I said, well, if you're not working well with that district management corporation, then stop the funding. And eventually they're going to have to not be able to create anything because now they're working as a business association or a merchants association.
right. Okay.
So the funding comes, but the funding comes from the businesses, right?
Yes.
From the owners.
It comes from the property owners themselves.
Right. So if we cut off the funding, so to speak, they're still going to, they could still self-fund, could they not?
They could, but they wouldn't have a mechanism to do so. So it would act like a merchants association again, or a chamber of commerce, where people would be paying dues but not obligated. So you would have the 80-20 rule most likely take effect.
I got you. And what's the obligation of the borough once? Is there any financial contribution or financial loss in terms of taxes?
No, usually the borough sometimes can make a contribution to get it started off the ground if they wanted to, but there is no financial obligation by the borough itself whatsoever.
What's typical though in terms of boroughs? Do they participate?
And what, and financially, you mean?
Yes.
Not really. In the beginning, they usually do to a certain extent. You know, they provide some seed money to get it up and running. But afterwards, there really is not much of a financial participation. That then becomes the partnership role, as we were talking about the zoning, working with the Department of Public Works, and a variety of other internal groupings to make sure that there is a good communication. But outside of that, it's just the relationships. That usually is not financial at all.
Who would pay for the initial feasibility study then?
Usually the governing body. That's the outlay of the organization. The governing body pays for the feasibility.
The borough. The borough has to put out that initial money.
The borough would normally do that. And what we say to most stakeholders is that the borough is looking at doing this, so they're giving you the opportunity to create this improvement district and looking at the feasibility. They're making the investment. So the borough makes the investment to look into doing this. And that is usually the extent of the investment.
So one thing you talked about in your presentation was that one of the benefits of having a special improvement district is that there's some self-determination. Can you expand on what you mean by that? The special improvement district itself would be what? Determining what's the best thing for them to do as a group of merchants and property owners?
Absolutely correct. That's what I mean by self-determining. It's determining their future as to what they want to do as property owners and business owners themselves. So they're the ones who are looking at what they believe is the best role or things that they can do to help the businesses at the street level. And so as one of the questions came, is that the property owners do pay, they are the payees of the payors. I've confused myself in my research, but they do make the payments to the improvement district as the assessments. They could pass along the assessment to the businesses or their tenants. Some do, some don't. It becomes a functionality of how the landlord wants to operate.
Okay.
Okay. And just
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, Tom. No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask a clarifying question. Property owner versus business owner that occupies the space.
Yes.
The property owner would have to pay this fee, not the business owner.
The property,
Correct?
correct. The property owner,
Property owner.
is
Interesting.
required based upon the assessment. That's why an improvement district utilizes the instrumentality of the governing body, of this taxing authority, of sending out the bills. So this way it makes it a mandatory payment to the property owner.
Yeah,
Property owner wants to pass along that
of course.
cost to their tenants. It depends upon how many tenants there are, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Okay. And have we done any polling whatsoever on our current businesses or property owners to see if they would even have any interest in something like this? I mean, $30,000, $32,000 is, not that it's a huge amount of money, but it's a decent amount of money. We argued for about 45 minutes over 40 something thousand last week. So, it's a decent amount of money. Have we done like any kind of straw polling to see if it's worth for us to spend this $32,000 on a feasibility study?
Well, that's a question for the governing body and obviously the mayor.
Actually, the point of the feasibility study is to have those conversations. If you send out a straw poll and say, do you want to get an assessment? I guarantee you everyone will say no. The idea of the feasibility study is to have the conversation of what that assessment is for, how it can help or not, is to see the whole purpose of it and to understand the concept rather than just say, do you want to get assessed or not?
Correct.
I agree with you, Mayor. If we don't explain to them what the benefit is, then the knee-jerk answer will be, no, I don't want to pay more. But I think that the purpose of this approach would be to educate ourselves and our property owners, business owners, about why this is a good idea and how it actually benefits them more than it costs them. And I guess that's the only reason you would do it, because the benefit outweighs the cost. What you're paying in, you're getting back either in, some sort of value, or increased traffic or increased business, increased rent. There's going to be some payback. That's the whole point of it. Otherwise, nobody would do it.
Right.
And the ones who do it would shut it down shortly, I assume. Is that the point, Stuart?
Well, you're absolutely correct. You want to be able, the people themselves have to feel a benefit. There needs to be a return on the investment. And the way I look at it is that, if you as a business owner are going to spend $1,000 on advertising, but now you have a $10,000 advertising budget because you can accumulating it from different businesses, you now increase your, advertising component by 100%, 10%, 1,000%. It all goes up. So the whole idea is to grow and have everybody working in conjunction with each other, just like a mall would advertise for the mall to foot traffic. The difference here is that we would be advertising or marketing or promoting or creating services for the property owners as a totality, as opposed to an individual location.
Right. The cost of having photographs with Santa Claus in the center of the mall, amortized over the stores in the mall is probably nominal compared to if one store tried to do it for themselves.
Absolutely. Same process, same concept. Yes, well put. So the thing here is that it's the governing body that's looking into, as you should be as the government, as to what is your leadership role, what is it that you want to accomplish for your constituents, and does this make sense for you to make this investment to put together a study that works out the best for everybody.
Okay. Do we have any more questions for Stuart?
I believe I don't know, Mayor. I know I sent you the Q&A on that information.
Yes. And I shared that with the council, as well as your proposal that broke out the phases.
And if anybody has,
We're having a problem with Anthony's having a problem with his connection, and I know there's people in the waiting room who.
I just got back like a couple minutes ago. Sorry about that. My whole screen just kind of went blank on me, and it took a while to figure out how to get back.
That's the modern wonders of technology.
Would you be able to send us the 2 slides you had of the clap and the cheer? I wasn't able to write that down fast enough. Would you be able to send us those 2 lists? What
Actually,
the
why don't you
functions are?
I
send
can
the whole PowerPoint?
the whole PowerPoint to you so you can take a look at it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I was going to say also, if any of you have any questions offline, I believe you have my phone number and email address, or the mayor can share with you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or have any conversations with you. And if you want to meet eventually, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Yeah,
Actually,
sorry, Mayor, I have one other question about, how does a SID work with the existing chambers and different groups that are already set up that are volunteer organizations that are set up to help the downtowns,
Right.
businesses?
The goal is to work with them, not to replace them, not to supplant them, not to suppress them. The goal is to be able to bring those groups into concert with each other and be the funding mechanism that enables everybody to succeed. So whether it be the chamber or merchants group or the downtown management corporation that you currently have, with downtown Bernardsville, and that group and that 501c3, you would want to work with them and figure out the best method of operations to have the improvement district work and succeed. So in terms of creating a district management corporation, it may be combining the models and using them together. But that's something that to be determined, and see how people feel about that on both sides of the coin.
Okay. I mean, and have you looked at Bernardsville specifically? Because we have, a group of businesses that are, surrounding in a certain area. And then we've got way further down businesses. And then we've got even way further down businesses. And, typically when we hold events, they're in a certain area and they don't benefit the way down businesses.
So I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say, have you looked at Bernardsville specifically? Have you participated in any other towns that are similar set up as us?
Yes, there are a lot of towns that have separate, distinct areas. We would look at this now and say, okay, if we want the whole borough to be the improvement district in terms of its commercial properties, so then who is going to receive the best benefit? And at what scales of models would that include? And then we would make a determination as to, okay, if it's the core center, it would be assessed at X dollars. If it's a fringes, it could be assessed as Y dollars, but because they're going to be receiving less services. In other words, if you want to do cleaning services and additional sanitation, you want to do it all over, how does that operate? So those cost structures have to be looked at. But if in terms of events, you would probably want to do one for each particular area if that's the way you were going to do it.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the whole idea of the feasibility study, quite frankly, is to make that determination as to whether it makes sense. The whole purpose of the study is this feasibility of utilizing an improvement district to create economic revitalization. If it's not feasible, based upon the study, then obviously it doesn't go through and your exposure is the 32,000.
Yeah. Okay, lots to think about. Thanks.
Anybody else? No? All right, Stuart, thank you so much for your presentation and for being here with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Everyone.
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
Thank to everybody.
Thanks.
Especially you enjoyed yourself. Again, I'm available. If you have any issues, please reach out to me. I will send the PowerPoint to the mayor and have that shared with you. And I look forward to speaking with you again.
All right. Thank you.
We'll leave
Have
the
a
meeting.
good evening.
Okay, thanks so much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we have approval of minutes from May 26th, June 8th, and June 12th. Anyone want to move them?
I'll move.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Voice vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We will now go to our open session. So if you would like to speak, please click on participants down at the bottom of your screen, I think, and raise your hand. Click on the little hand so that we know you want to speak. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you watch Anthony, he will have his iPad up with a timer because there's a lot of people in the audience. So if everyone wants to say something, it'll take a while. So try and keep your comments short. And let me see if I see anybody's hands up, and then you will be unmuted when we see your hand go up. So anybody want to speak?
I don't see any hands yet, but just to be clear, is this the only open session of the
No,
evening?
there's another one at the end.
There is this week.
Yeah,
Okay,
on the
thank you.
second meeting of the month, we have 2.
Okay, thank you.
I see Olivia Manning, so I'm unmuting her.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Olivia.
Hi.
You
I
got
just wanted-
up there.
Can you guys hear me okay? My phone's kind of funky. I just wanted to comment obviously on Stuart's presentation. Just to note the comment about, working with the groups in town. It is actually our instigating this process as downtown Bernardsville. Because, as following the Main Street organization process that we've been doing the last couple of years, events and so forth, particularly now with COVID, that we don't have events, that we have to come up with creative ways to conduct events and obtain revenue to do the work that we ultimately want to be doing. We need to come up with best possible solutions, and most, if not all, towns who have followed or are following a Main Street process are improvement districts in some capacity. So it was really our searching for information and trying to understand, what these towns are doing and how they're accomplishing it, and finding a couple organizations that do exactly what Stuart talked to everybody about today. So are we going to work together? Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, I've been trying to do the best I can to communicate with everybody involved in this kind of process for revitalization and so forth, and business support in some way. And this just seems like the logical step to be able to really 100% bring it all together and do the promotional plans that I've spoken to some of you about, to do the things that will actually propel this community forward in the direction we need. And obviously, as much as we can volunteer and do all that stuff for free, there's still that element of things have to get paid for. Even in a marketing perspective, I can continue doing that marketing work, but I can't cover all those costs all the time. So that being said, I just wanted to make sure that, you guys all knew that downtown Burnsville is 100% a part of this. And, we're trying to do the best we can to come up with ways to get us continuing on this path towards revitalization from the inside out. So that's all I want to say. I hope you guys do consider this. And again, if there are any questions as well, I'm happy to help wherever I can too.
All right. Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public wish to be heard at this time? I'm looking, just click on the raise hand in the participant list. Anthony, you seeing any? I'm not seeing any.
No, I'm not seeing any.
Okay, so I will close this public session. We will have another one at the end, so you will have a second opportunity. We have no ordinances at this point, so we'll move on to resolutions. We have 2168 through 2179. So any that you want to discuss separately?
I'd like to discuss 177 separately, please.
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
Yep, I have I had questions on 175 and 179 as well.
Okay, so why don't we, before we move any of them, let's take the ones that you had questions on. So 2175, this is the development agreement with RPM to develop affordable housing for the borough. Jack, would you like to address what this is covering? Because we have had an agreement with them. Yes?
Yes, the borough several years ago, right after the settlement agreement with Fair Share Housing Center, sent out an RFQ for a redevelopment entity to develop both the senior side of North Findlay Avenue as well as the scattered sites throughout the borough. RPM was the successful proposer for that, and we've been in discussions with them for several years as to that, and working out the details, and now we're in a position to proceed. As I noted, and we've discussed previously, in order to have a viable tax credit application, you need to have 50 units or close to it. And the senior site and the family sites are really considered two separate applications for tax credits. So the proposal at this point in time calls for 47 senior units at North Findlay and 48 units at the scattered sites, which are throughout the borough. Dan Levin from CGP&H and I have discussed this with John Zabo, the borough planner, and he is supportive. That will give us extra units, actually, either in this round if we need them or in the next round going forward.
Gina, did you have any specific questions on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering about the going from 20 units at that one specific location to 47, and then increasing from 30 to 48 in total for these properties. Are the developers are okay with that? I mean, I think we should be like a certain percentage of affordable housing units of the overall size of things. So I'm just, going from 20 to 47 seems considerable, or am I misreading that?
Well, the 20, just to clarify, the 20 was the number in the fair share settlement agreement, but actually it's been like 40 with the RPM right from the beginning. So it's a fairly insignificant increase. And senior housing is very desirable from the borough standpoint. First of all, the units are smaller, so you can have more units on a smaller site. And secondly, obviously, they don't contribute school children to the tax base.
But what we're approving the resolution tonight is just sort of an update to what was previously agreed.
Yes, yeah, the agreement's been almost ready to go for a while. Everything's been on hold, obviously, because of COVID-19 and some other things.
Okay.
And Jack, there was a lot of red line in this agreement. I tried to read most of it, but I'm assuming a lot of this red line was you.
Yes.
And you're satisfied with all of the fundamental changes? Because a lot of it was just legal language.
Yes. Most of the red line is mine. Some is Dan Levin from CGP&H. But yes, we're satisfied.
Okay. So Gina, you okay with leaving that now on the list? 175?
Yeah. I was just curious about the change in the numbers and stuff. So thank you.
177, this is adopted in recognition of the senseless death of George Floyd and in support of the call for action. This was a resolution that we received from the county, that the county passed, and asked that each municipality, from the freeholders, asked that each municipality also follow suit with it. So that's where it came from.
So my issue with this is it makes statements and accusations both about our citizens and our police department that I don't believe are true. And I mean, I'm all for a resolution that discusses, rooting out racism wherever it exists. But what I'm not willing to do is to sign something that specifically states in multiple places things that I don't believe to be true about either our citizens or our police department. So if I'm going to pass this, I want to see significant revisions to this language.
Well, did this go through any kind of review process? Like, I haven't seen this until it got on the agenda.
It came from the freeholders directly. So they asked that we put it on for.
They didn't communicate that to the whole council, and certainly this did not come through the Public Safety Committee to talk to the people really involved on this. I think again, I agree with Councilman McQueen. I think I'm wholeheartedly in favor of the need to review all of our policies and procedures. I'm wholeheartedly in favor of the sentiment expressed behind this resolution, that the need to fight racism and to promote social justice. But I also feel that the language is somewhat harsh and is a presumption of guilt in some places that, I think we should create our own resolution that speaks in our own voice.
Yes.
I agree, Jeff. I thought I was going to ask the same question if, if public safety or the chief or any members of the police department had reviewed this prior to it coming on the agenda.
Well, and it's not just the police department too, by the way. It speaks to about borough's employees, and I think we need to do a top to bottom review of what we do, what our needs are in this community, what we can do better. I'm assuming that part of the mayor's diversity committee that is being put together will do that. I don't know what their charge is yet, and I'm not sure how they're going to function. But I assume that that's part of what we're doing. So we're already down that path, but we can't presume to know what minorities have to deal with, and we need to talk and ask. But I think you don't start out from a position of saying we're bad, and there's one word. If I had to pick out one word, if I had to pluck one word out of this resolution that I think is just a red button for me, is it's overhaul, which implies that you have to start from scratch and redo everything.
And that we have a systemic problem in this borough, which is the exact language it uses, which I'm not okay with saying.
So do we have problems? Are we perfect? No, we're not perfect, and we do have problems, but I don't like the way this resolution was crafted, and it's just being dropped on us. And, I haven't seen any requests from the freeholders that we adopted.
No, I believe it went to all the mayors of every municipality in Somerset County. We can forward it instead to Public Works, and you guys can start rewriting it, and I will tell the freeholders that that's what we're doing with it.
The other thing I think, though, we have to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. I think there's some sentiments in here that are expressed that I think all of our employees, top to bottom in the borough, including our police department, would firmly agree with. So when we go through this, I think that, we need to be careful that we don't water it down to the extent where it doesn't say what everybody already agrees with. And I think, the statement about following the death of George Floyd, there's finally occurred an awakening of historic and constant mistreatment of segments of our community. And I think that statement is globally applicable, and the public seeks answers and, more importantly, solutions to this issue. And I think that that's what we as borough employees, as borough council members, more appropriately, we owe answers and solutions to the issue. And that's what I think we need to take ownership of. So as we review this and we reword it in a way that everybody's comfortable with, or that the majority are comfortable with, I think we want to make sure that the good that's written here is not lost or overshadowed by the things that need updates, changes, or modification.
I agree. There needs to be an action plan. And I think we need to work with the administrator, with Ralph Maresca. We need to, basically sit down and say every department in of our borough should be able to come up with a plan for what we can do better. How can we engage every member of our community better? I think that this resolution is lacking in that regard.
Yeah, it seems more like of a check the box kind of thing to pass this, rather than to make sure that it's done correctly and that there's actionable things that come out of it. And that,
so we want the Public Safety Committee to take it on first. Do you want to rework the wording?
Well, I think it ought to be a joint effort, quite frankly, because it's not just the police. It's not just the police. I mean, every department has to deal with this, and I think we could work jointly with the Diversity Committee as an example.
Okay, actually, we're meeting tomorrow, so.
I mean, maybe Personnel Committee should be looking at this. I mean, I don't know if I'm not sure what role Public Works would have, but we should definitely involve as many people as possible in making sure that we're not leaving any stones unturned here.
Well, I think the important thing is the call to action is that, yes, we're going to do something. Yes, we're going to review our policies. Yes, we're going to provide training if people need training. And I think that's the key piece. And Councilman O'Day, I think you're right about there are parts of it that are worth keeping. But maybe some of the language is doesn't represent us. So
I think I'd like to add something to this in the short time that we've had to kind of review it and digest it. One of the things that it has done, which is a great thing, is open up this conversation that we're having. And I would love to see it go further than that in terms of, you know, yes, it should go to public safety. Yes, it should go to diversity committee, but we have an amazing police department who does a great job of connecting with the students at the schools, connecting with community members, and now more than ever, they've been doing a great job of that with the coronavirus and sharing information. So even if we could bring some type of, you know, like a coffee with a cop type format where everyone's welcome and we have like a, you know, like just a conversation, just open up the conversation and help people understand what are our policies, because a lot of people probably don't even know some of the great policies we already have in place that address a lot of these whereases that are in this resolution. So is there room for improvement? I think any and every organization has room for improvement, including us. So we can definitely, I'm happy to lead if Jeff Hammond and the Public Safety Committee would be okay with it, some kind of town hall discussion, whether it's on Zoom or at the library.
I can interrupt you. That's pretty much what the Diversity Council is going to do, is start that conversation and hopefully come up with the kind of things we need to do and make a recommendation to the council and say, maybe this, we need a public forum, or we need a cops with some, a cop program, or those kinds of things. So yes, absolutely. We will be going through those kinds of things. We can, so let's pull this off. I will communicate to the county that we're going to make it our own. And then we can start, and maybe just if everyone wants to edit their own copy as well, maybe we can do that, or maybe let's make a Google Doc that we can collaborate on, if that's something you'd rather do, rather than, 7 different versions.
I think that's a reasonable approach. It gives us sort of a way to dynamically update things.
Yeah. And I also wanted to compliment Chief Valentine, if he's here. We both got an email from somebody asking specific things about our policies, and the chief did an amazing job of responding to her on every point, that with information I wasn't aware of either, but he really did a very thorough job responding to all the things, all the practices we have in place that people are asking for us to do, we already do. So I thought that was admirable. Thank you, Chief.
And Christine, to your point, since you're on the Public Safety Committee, we can work together, at least from our aspect on this.
All right. So
I also think I just wanted to follow on Christine's earlier point too about the accolades for our local police. I read input from our at least one constituent who was very congratulatory and appreciative of the approach that the police took during the recent protests specifically related to George Floyd. And, I understand from the input I've received, that the only input I've received has been positive in the way they handled the situation that day and the way they interacted with our community. I do think that this is an important issue that people want answers and solutions on going forward, not just reviews and talks. And I think that, engaging with our police as part of the solution, rather than an us versus them, is the right approach.
Agreed.
Thank you, Tom.
Mayor, is there any way that you could let the council members know who is part of the Diversity Council? I know we've received a ton of Skills Banks forms.
I know.
Sure.
Yeah, I will. I will send you the list, because I just kind of notified everybody that had asked.
I think there's a lot of interest in the Diversity Council. I'm just wondering, process-wise, how are we ensuring that our Diversity Council is diverse? The committee, I mean.
Mainly because we have, Lieutenant Remian. We have a police officer. I actually had a request from those of you who've been here a while. Remember, I forget what he ended up as. Bill Ussery, who was on our police department and also a psychologist. Jeff Hammond's son is on it. We have Pastor Dan, who really represents the Latino community. The young, the student who spoke at the protest is going to be on it. We have the superintendent of schools. One of the organizers of the protest is on it. So I think it's a very varied group. And I think it's a diverse group. I think we've got a good
but it sounds very much like it is, Mayor. Thank you for that. I wonder if, once we see the formulation of the group, if there's anybody that seems to be not represented or underrepresented, maybe we can make a specific outreach to members of that community if it so happens that we feel like there's a gap.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
And how many people? Sorry, how many people are on it?
It's about 16, which is pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And Mayor, you're
Mainly
representing
because I didn't
council.
want to. I didn't want to say no to somebody who asked to, who put in the paperwork to join it. So, I didn't want to be selective. So we'll see how it works out.
Okay.
So 2179, amending resolution 2155. Who pulled this one out?
That was me. I just had a question. I didn't understand why this was needed. Is it from the Board of Health or was it just from the borough that we?
No, it's from the Jeff, from the borough risk manager.
Ah, okay. Okay, so they just wanted this additional clarifications?
Yes, they wanted the insurance requirement the whole time was.
Okay.
When it's on borough property.
Oh, just for borough property, right?
Right.
Okay, that makes more sense. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so now we have resolutions 2168 to 2179 without 177. So do I have a motion?
I'll move
I'll
them.
move. I'll
Second. Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes, aye.
Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Mr. O'Day,
Yes.
Ms. Zamara.
Yes.
Okay, now we are doing reports. So public safety. Jeff, do you have something to report?
No, we actually haven't had a formal meeting. We had some communication by email over the resolution we just discussed. There hasn't been a whole lot of non-COVID related activities with public safety recently, so there's really nothing to report. I can say that, and I think it's worth noting for those who aren't really following the numbers, that, and I haven't checked today, but as of yesterday, as of Sunday, we have not had a COVID case, not only in Bernardsville, but in the 5 towns of the Somerset Hills in a week. The last one was in last Monday. And I think that speaks to, everybody making the sacrifices necessary to keep us safe, and as well as the good activities of not only our police department, but I think a shout out also to the first aid squad and to the fire department. So I think everybody pulling together has really put us in a very favorable position.
Thank you. Finance, Tom?
So finance, we did not have a meeting, but we did meet and we introduced the budget. So I think everybody was up to speed on what the latest actions regarding finance are and the changes that we made to try and allow ourselves to open the pool and the camps this summer. I don't know if there's an update from borough staff on what the signups are just yet.
We did just get an email from our new director. Did everybody see that? Anthony sent it out kind of late in the afternoon. So
I didn't see it myself.
I thought that was about camps. I thought that was
the camps. Yeah.
Yeah. The pool registration, I spoke to them this afternoon. It's about 50% of the target registration so far after 7 days. And some people were definitely waiting on the policies and procedures, and they were just released yesterday.
Yeah, I just saw those.
So it's at a decent percentage given the fact that we just released our policies yesterday.
Councilwoman, what are the policies and procedures? Are they vastly different from the past years?
No, they're really just based on the state guidelines as far as capacity goes and cleaning and, recommendations for keeping people distant, things like that. I think the biggest thing is that the Board of Health has suggested that we, or I think maybe mandated, that we're not allowed to use the diving boards.
No diving boards?
Yeah.
Okay.
Really?
I know why.
What does that have to do with anything?
I don't know. I was wondering the same thing. I asked the
If
same
they
questions, but I
suggest
think
it,
it's
do we have to
about,
follow it?
Oh, you know what? I think because you use the handles going up. You know, it's got a ladder and you're climbing a ladder. So you're putting your hands on the ladder and then the next person puts their hands on the ladder.
It's full of water, full of chlorine. I'm not sure where the danger here is.
Oh, but the jury's still out on chlorine, so.
Can we get so Gina, can we get clarification? And to Jeff's point, do we have to follow it?
yeah, I asked the same question. I think that we do have to follow it, but I will double check. I don't know if anybody from, if Bob or Neil or Ted are on the line, they can help answer, but I'll send a quick text and see if I can get something back.
Well,
Yeah.
one other thing, just to follow up on Councilman McQueen's point, is this something that's being passed down through our local health department coming from the state, which carries a lot more weight than if the state's been silent on it and this is just their opinion?
Yes.
Yeah, as far as I know, we sent our recommendations for policies to the Board of Health and they reviewed them and that was their only comment back.
Okay.
Basking Ridge Board of Health.
I mean, does the Board of Health have specific jurisdiction here, Jeff? For a pool? I mean, obviously they do for over meals, but do they have specific jurisdiction on the pool?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking the group.
I think they have input, but here, when you say we sent it off to the Basking Ridge Board of Health, the question is, were they making an opinion based on their own opinion, or is this an opinion that's come down from the state or county Board of Health, which really carries more weight?
Yeah. And to Mary Jane's point, Jack, I forgot we have Jack. Jack, is it an opinion or is it binding? Do we have?
I'm just looking at the state guidelines now. Assuming it came from the state, it's binding. As you may recall, one of the first executive orders.
Yeah, as far as I know, it is not from the state. It's from our
Board of Health.
Local Board of Health, and it says, thanks, Bob, for the quick response. He sent me an email and said, yes, Board of Health said no to diving boards, not a recommendation. I spoke with them this morning.
Yeah, I don't see it in the list of guidelines from the state, so you must be right.
So, Jack, in that circumstance, if it's a local recommendation, do they have jurisdiction, or can this decision be made
they said
internally?
it's not a recommendation, so it's a guideline for now from locally. But
they
can say that, but whether or not it's enforceable or not is a different.
It's not enforceable.
Our own guidelines for the tennis courts that were different from theirs.
Yeah, and guidelines are not enforceable, regardless. So.
But if they tell us not to use the diving boards and we do, can they shut down the pool?
No.
They can't.
Not based on a guideline.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I would be interested what we could look and see what the swimming and diving organizations at the high school and college level have to say about this. There are other groups that could weigh in with guidelines, and I certainly wouldn't take just a single organization's point of view unless it's the state.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah. Tom, is there do we have a cutoff for registration for the pool at some point? I mean, is there a date when we say we didn't make it, or a date when we say we're good, let's go? Or
I think that would have to come from from our staff to tell us what the date would be. I think what we ended up doing, and I think that it goes without saying that the money that we spent to paint the pool, prep the pool, the things that we're doing this week to get it ready is going to be an unrecoverable cost,
right?
Whether we open or not. So I think we should treat that as a sunk cost at this point. But to the extent that we calculated what the break-even number would be, I heard Councilwoman McCready say we're at 50% of that target number now. I think the council would have to reassemble, and we'd have to be provided the deadline from borough staff about when that would be. So
or maybe
I would defer to them, but I would say it'd have to be sometime before July 6th for sure.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that the 50% registration number that we're at was our total target. It was not to recover our opening and closing costs.
No, we didn't. I think for some reason I have 88,000 in my head. Is that the number of the revenue that we're expecting? So is that the? I
Yeah,
think Ralph said 88,000 was the
That sounds familiar, Mayor, but I don't know. I don't have the number right in front of me, but that sounds familiar.
So we're like halfway there. That's good for the first week. That's hopeful.
yeah, 7 days. And again, without the rules, without the policies out.
Right. So that's people are coming
waiting for
one way or
those.
the other. That's people are coming even if it was a restrictive environment.
Right,
And I don't think we're painting a very restrictive environment.
I don't
If
think
I
so
read
either.
the capacity limitations, that the capacity limitations are well above what we typically see on a full day of 100% participation, our highest day during last year. We're well above that ceiling, so we can service all those people as long as they don't all get into the pool at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know that the pools in the hills did not open. They're not opening. So we may get some people from there, some of the kids from the school.
Yeah.
And Bernards Township still hasn't made their decision. So if they don't open, that will be good for us.
I heard Pleasant Valley was opening, but they are restricting the number of pools that they open. So
Well,
I
they
think they're
can't
only
open
opening
any
their
of
larger pool.
They can't do any of the spray things. Those haven't been allowed yet. Any of the, the water dancing and all those kind of specialty water type things are not allowed yet.
Yeah, but I don't think the baby pools or the smaller pools are allowed to open for Pleasant Valley either, because they have a lot more water space, but less grass space than we do in Bernardsville. So they're not allowed to open the smaller pools, from what I understand.
As we get closer to whatever a proverbial deadline needs to be, I mean, like, was mentioned, I think we're a few weeks away. Can the rec department, Bob and Neil, can they think differently about revenue? Either through things like, a limited number of guest pass? Are there different things that they can do to get to yes?
I don't understand what you mean, Chad. Say it again.
So
Sorry.
we have a very
creative thinking.
Creative thinking for revenue. So allowing we talked about maybe having families being able to buy 5 passes for the summer, different ways to get folks to come and enjoy the pool to allow us to get to yes if we're going to fall significantly short.
Yeah, I mean, again, being 50% within 7 days of opening, I don't anticipate being significantly short. But the rec committee has definitely spoken about different types of revenue increasing models, like with swim teams and renting the space and things like that. They have not discussed day passes who are not guests of specific members. I know that Pleasant Valley has already said there's no guests allowed, period, because they don't want to be restrictive on capacity and things like that. I'm assuming that's the reason. But we have not said anything like that about guest passes and things like that. But there's definitely revenue ideas, nothing specific about, things, the examples that you just mentioned though, Chad.
Yep.
I think Councilman McQueen did the point about being creative, though. I think you had actually mentioned something when we were first looking at this, saying, could we look at this collectively across the camps and the pool this year, kind of roll it all up onto one, rec line. And, if there's a shortfall of 10,000 on one line and an overage projected of 10,000 on another line, would we look at it this year as a one-off COVID year that we would net it all out collectively and still move ahead? I think that was a suggestion that you earlier made. That would be another way for us to consider these. And to that extent, if we're getting early information about interest in camps, that would be instructive in taking that approach should we decide to do it.
I'm just suggesting everything should be on the table.
Yeah, I like the idea. And I don't know, do we have any early indication about the interest in camps?
So camp is a really sore subject for me because Neil, as the acting director before Bob joined last week, has been working with and waiting on the Board of Ed to respond whether or not we can use the school, which we've used historically annually. But with COVID restrictions and school properties not being able to be used, we've been waiting on the Board of Ed. And they finally came back. Initially, they came back and said potentially we could use it for inclement weather and potentially for the bathrooms. That's what the request was from the rec committee or the rec department, I should say. And they came back just last week and said, no, we cannot use the school for anything, not the bathrooms, not inclement weather. nothing. So we haven't even opened registration for the camps because we were waiting on that guidance. Now we have to rent tents. I mean, we were going to rent tents anyway, obviously for, you know, additional outdoor activities. But then we might have to also now rent porta-johns, which, you know, from a liability perspective, you know, keeping those clean as opposed to keeping, like, say, the outside bathrooms that are available at BMS where you don't even have to enter the school, but the bathrooms are there and accessible that we could clean. I think, you know, I've spoken with Jack about this a little bit. Well, not spoken, but emailed. And, you know, the liability seems higher with porta-johns than with, you know, trying to keep the bathrooms clean. And also with inclement weather, there's really nowhere for any kids to go except underneath the overhangs of the schools, regardless. And the original request was to ask Jack to discuss with the lawyer for the Board of Ed, just to explain the liability. Maybe we could sign a hold harmless, you know, just to open the discussion. But that discussion did not happen, lawyer to lawyer. The other thing that we are planning to do, though, for the bathrooms, in addition to potentially renting porta-johns, is to open up the pool restrooms. But the pool restrooms also have restrictions for capacity, lines, things like that, that have to be taken into consideration amongst the groups. So, Jack, do you have anything to add from the lawyer to lawyer discussion?
No, I was just, Ralph emailed me and said I should not contact the lawyer. So it's up to you all whether you want me to pursue that. It does seem to me, Gina and I did communicate about this. You know, if we sign a hold harmless and provide insurance, I'm not sure that there's any increased liability on the schools.
Why do we not want to have a lawyer to lawyer conversation? Why was that? Why were you directed not to do that? What was the logic you were given?
I can explain that because I spoke to the superintendent to ask her what the situation was. She said it was not the attorney's decision, it was their insurance company's decision. She contacted the attorney simply to say, you know, is there something we can do? The attorney said, maybe we can modify your agreement with the borough. We don't have an agreement with the school. There's nothing in writing as to, you know, who provides what to whom. So it was really their insurance company. And what Superintendent Dempsey said is the board hasn't really met and discussed this as a whole. And what they were trying not to hold us up in our planning because they haven't discussed what they're going to do about this. So it may yet come to that, but they didn't want us to wait in planning in case it doesn't happen. So
yeah, I mean, we've been asking for over a month and waiting for their response for over a month. And every time it's the next Board of Ed meeting, and then the next Board of Ed meeting, no decision happens or there's more information that's required. So I'm not sure why we couldn't, I mean, if we speak with their lawyer, even if it was their insurance company's decision to say no, if we speak with their lawyer and then the lawyer can speak with their insurance company and say, hey, they're going to sign this hold harmless agreement, they're going to be doing X, Y, and Z, then I don't know why we can't continue a discussion further, I guess is.
My thought is extraordinary times call for extraordinary measures. And I think that we should, you know, ensure that we sort of done everything we can to make this work. We're so close to it being successful that to have it because we can't schedule a meeting or something. I don't know. If I were on the Board of Ed, I'd be happy to have a special meeting to discuss this.
Yeah, I mean, I think in addition, you know, so, I mean, again, the rec department has been jumping through hoops and circles.
Absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, like, we need some complementary effort.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the email from Bob that came late tonight, was about, you know, how they adjust rec camp for the only, you know, non-use of school property. I mean, the inclement weather thing is obviously you know, no matter what, if we have nowhere for the kids to go, they're going in under the overhangs of the schools, regardless, right? That's the only place they could possibly go. Maybe some in the overhang of the pool, but that's the entrance to the pool. So that's not a good scenario. And I think for, you know, having what they were suggesting was that they were going to reduce and not do a full day camp at all, because, you know, I mean, it's hot, right? I mean, the kids, you can be in a tent and be in the shade, but if there's no breeze or whatever, it's hot. So to keep people out for, you know, the kids out for a 6-hour day, trying to figure out lunch outside and all this other stuff. They just said, you know what, if we don't have access to the schools, then we need to go to a half-day camp only and go from 9 to 12. So those were some of the recommendations that were put in the email from Bob tonight.
Well, the problem with the school is if they go inside, they'd have to be in the gym to social distance, and the gym is not air conditioned. It's probably hotter than being outside. So they felt like that was not a solution
I don't really
either.
know about that. That doesn't seem reasonable, but okay.
Do they usually go in the gym, Mayor, or is that they're saying this year?
I don't know where they usually, I mean.
They're usually in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
They're usually in the cafeteria, not in the gym.
I think sometimes, they put a movie on in the cafeteria, but I don't think they could, depending on how many children are in the program, is how far they'd have to social distance them.
But maybe if they would allow us to social distance in the cafeteria and we went to a half-day camp, you could have 100% of the kids, but half of them are there in the morning, a different half are there in the afternoon, and perhaps social distance would be achievable. I understand social distance may not be achievable with the normal quantity of registrants, but maybe with the half-day plan, maybe social distancing in the cafeteria actually would work.
Well, I think what people are looking for is either a whole day or a half, not a split session.
So I'm wondering, so obviously there's a lot of folk, I'm pointing at the screen. I don't know if you can, I'm pointing at Gina and Tom. So there's a lot of people on our end that are working really hard to make this happen. And I talked about jurisdiction. Is this really nothing more than an excuse by the Board of Ed to say no? And is their intent really just to say no? So is any further discussion going to have any additional fruit? Because what I'm hearing is you've been asking for a month. They said no. They've delayed. They said no. They said no. Then they said no again.
No, they haven't said no. This was the first time they ever said no.
Okay.
This was the first time. And that's why I wanted the lawyers to talk, just for that reason, Chad, because, are they just saying no because they want to say no? That's one thing. Then just come out with it.
Just come out and say no.
Right? Just say no. I mean, you'll have an uproar from a lot of parents for a little while and they'll be mad, especially with virtual school and everything else that's been going on. But, at least it's transparent and it's honest, and you're telling your residents and your town, your school Board of Ed constituents.
Because you're mentioning the path to yes here and hold harmless in various things. Now, at the end of the day, as we've learned through multiple places, if their insurance company is saying that we're not going to insure you if you do this, that's different, right?
Mm-hmm. But is it really? I mean, because
it is. I mean, so there have been multiple, the whole, not to bring up other situations, but the situation where, having the path going down into the King's Plaza, right? Their insurance company said that we're not going to allow this to happen.
Yeah,
so
I
if
don't
it's
know
an
if that's
insurance
true, actually,
issue,
Chad.
What's that?
I don't know if that's true. Really.
Yeah, that's why I started to stop myself short. So I think we need the answer. We need to understand what the answer is. If it's no, and if it's the insurance company saying no, and there's no path to yes, we just need to know for certain.
Well, and that's why I'd like Jack to speak with their lawyer. I don't understand why we're not allowing that, and why the conversations just are happening between the mayor, no offense, mayor, but between the mayor and the superintendent only. I mean, I think that there's a lot of other, if it's really, truly legal and or insurance, I think that Jack and the lawyer for the Board of Ed could get to it very quickly, probably in a 30-minute conversation or less, right, Jack?
A lot less.
Yeah.
Counsel, comments?
I would like our attorney to talk to their attorney.
I would as well.
Jeff?
Attorneys make deals. That's what they do. They do that a lot better than we do. I think that a conversation between the two of them can find the roadblocks, the obstacles, and decide whether, there's something that they might be able to do.
I mean, ultimately the answer may be no, but I just like to make sure we try as hard as we can before we get to no.
And we get the real reasons why.
Jack?
Attorneys make deals. That may be the quote of the year.
I like it.
Jack, your next question should be, how many bags of 50s or what am I bringing to my negotiating table?
You'll notice, Chad, that I said
I don't think I should ask that question, Chad.
Do you know who the school attorney is?
I asked Ralph that when I was going to call him. I'll find out and give him a call in the morning. or her.
Yeah, I think it's a lady. At least it was last year.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, whomever, I will call in the morning.
Okay, so
Thank
now
you,
we're
Jack.
up to Personnel Committee. Chad?
Welcome, Bob. I don't know if there's like 100 people on tonight.
No, we're down to 39 now.
Okay. My eyes are too bad. I don't know if Bob is here tonight.
He was listening for sure because he sent me a quick email when I asked for his status. So definitely listening.
All right. I don't see his name. So if you're here, Bob, raise your hand. We'd love you to say hello. Welcome to the team. And I know his first day was, I think, a few days ago. So it looks like you're already involved.
Wednesday last week, the 17th.
So welcome. Other than that, the personnel committee has not met. I think we probably met every day for about 3 weeks. So no one wants to talk anymore. So we haven't met since the last time, but we need to get a meeting on the books, especially if we're going to discuss any personnel matters in relationship to what we were discussing before. So there was no official meeting. Just wanted to welcome Bob.
Thank you. Christine, Public Works?
Oh, sorry, that's me.
Tom's gonna give the update.
Oh,
tonight because
okay.
I missed it.
Yep. So the update I have on the Public Works Committee, we had a meeting last week, maybe 10 days ago. The Hull and Lindaberry Road work paving is started the week of June 15th. Lloyd Road contract has been awarded. So that work is going to be underway soon. White Neck Road permit was issued. This is for bank stabilization on White Neck Road. That work will be done in August, and we're expecting that work on White Neck Road will be done before school starts or before the regular scheduled start of school. The library roof and HVAC are completed. There's mold remediation and final cleanup the week of June 17th and some air testing that'll be done by the week of June 26th in the library. So that work will be completed while the library is closed. The communications of road moratoriums efforts internally between departments is ongoing. I think we've got most of the process in place, but I'll ask for an update for that. If there's anything that needs to be updated from the staff. Let's see. I can't read my handwriting, sorry. Mount and Hillside paved by New Jersey American Water. Gina, do you remember what that one was?
Mount Harmony?
Mount Harmony Road and Hillside is being paved by New Jersey American Water.
Yeah, I thought they were giving us money for that.
No, that was.
Then that's connecting with work that we're going to do on Meeker, Mount Harmony, and Lakewood by the end of June, which I think that's where New Jersey American Water gave us money. So we're going to do work up until a point, and then they're going to do some of the work themselves. So we're going to do Meeker, Mount Harmony, and Lakewood by the end of June. I'm sorry, that's where New Jersey American Water is going to be doing work by the end of June, and then we're going to repave it in September and October, because once they dig up to put in the new water pipes, we need to let the ground settle so that the newly repaved road will be solid. John McDowell said that they were progressing with plans on painting the pool and prepping things for opening of the pool July 6th, assuming that we can do that. And PSE&G will be restoring the road on Route 202 and Mount Airy Road. People probably remember that it was shut down a number of nights, and they put new, I believe it was gas lines in along our main downtown street, and then turning and going up Mount Airy Road by the train bridge. They're going to be actually repaving and restoring that road. They've left it only patched up till now, again, so it could settle, and they're going to be actually doing the work. We're asking for an update. I don't know if we have it for tonight, of the dates and the duration of that. That was a request that came out of the Public Works meeting. So if we don't have it now, we'll soon have an answer from PSE&G on how many days that's going to take and how long it's going to take. Hopefully it would be only a couple of nights, and it would be done, after dark, so that there'd be less traffic at the time.
I'm sorry, what road was that?
Route 202, right through our downtown. There were some gas lines put in, and they tore up Route 202 quite significantly, as well as Mount Airy Road intersection at Alcott Square, and a little bit up Mount Airy Road towards the Ammerman parking lot. So that's all going to be repaved and resurfaced by PSE&G.
Did they say when? Did they give us any dates for that?
Well, they didn't have any dates. I think they had an issue with the equipment availability or something. So we were asking them for dates, and we wanted them to specify the duration as well, because obviously we don't want them in the downtown any longer than they absolutely have to be there.
Sure.
So there's no final determination, but they discussed something like a 3 or 4 day or 3 or 4 night project.
Yeah, I mean, Tom rightfully brought up during the meeting, you know, that obviously now we're only allowed to eat outside. And so even a project at night would not be so nice from a smell and an atmosphere standpoint when people are ripping up the road.
Right. We didn't want them to be paving this in front of the station pub when the station pub just opened up their outdoor patio. So, you know, we talked about trying to come up with a plan that would be as little disruptive as possible. And it came back that, you know, they probably get the whole entire project done in 3 or 4 days. So, you know, rather than bend over too far backwards, it might be good if it was just a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and at least we wouldn't interrupt the weekend people going to restaurants.
Okay, thank you. Anybody have questions for Tom? No? Land Use Committee, we did have a meeting with with our Downtown Redevelopment Committee. We had the very, very first rough draft for Quimby Village for the redevelopment plan, which I shared with all of you. And I think so far I've heard from Chad and Jeff, who wanted to meet with topology. He had some time on Friday. So I don't know if anybody else was interested. If we get more than 3 at a time, we can just stagger them. So if anybody else wants to be part of that conversation, let me know.
Yeah,
So it's sort of like a Quimby Village. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, yes, I would like to meet with them as well, as you know, if it's a Zoom call or something. Do that.
So it's a Quimby Village update, essentially.
Yeah, it's just what the redevelopment committee was looking at our last meeting is what I've shared with the rest of the council, just so they're kind of up to date with what's going on, so they can see it before the next draft, and ask any questions before it goes too far along in the process. That way the council can have input in it. Other committees, commission reports.
Sorry, Mayor. Sorry, I just wanted to go back. Tom, should we talk about the walking path now, or I didn't know if that was.
Yeah,
I can't remember.
That's we probably should underneath the.
Okay, Public Works.
Public Works. I thought, I mean, at one point, Doug said it was going to be on the agenda tonight, but we may have missed the deadline.
Yeah, I wasn't sure because I thought it was supposed to be there too, and then we didn't.
Yeah.
You know, obviously.
Okay, so let's talk about that. So we had last year, the council unanimously passed an ordinance that funded both the Branstetter Carroll investigation and also funded some discrete projects related to open space, one of which was the walking path around the polo grounds, the lower polo grounds. And we went out, the Public Works Committee went out with Doug Walker, and we walked the area. We reviewed a topography map that he showed. We looked at pictures of what the path might look like, the materials used, the width of the path, the location, the shape of the path. And he also talked about some work that would be done alongside the path, it's not the path specifically, such as some incremental drainage for what is effectively the outfield for the further back baseball field, and a fence that would be near the closer baseball field that would protect anybody walking on the path from foul balls. So those things rolled up in the. We had a draft proposal, but we would still have to go to RFP for the actual work. The draft proposal estimated that we would have probably sufficient funds remaining in that ordinance to do this path. And I think what we asked at the Public Works meeting was that we were going to get a list of what was on the ordinance originally, what would be done, and what would not, if things couldn't be done because we ran out of funds, if we go down this path, what would not be on the list of completed work. So I don't know if Doug or John McDowell are on the call, but if they have that updated list, that was one of the things we requested at a Public Works meeting as well. But essentially the path would be from an ADA cut in the sidewalk near the two handicap parking spots, and then would cross over the existing roadway entrance that goes up towards the turf field, and then drop down by the backside of the softball turf field, and then connect to a pre-existing path that goes basically 2/3 of the way around already. So this would complete effectively a U-shaped loop, and you would have the ability to either traverse from one end of the U to the other end of the U through the parking lot, or if you prefer, you could walk on a grassy area that's a little bit of a berm on the side of the one baseball field there. So that's what we discussed. I don't know. Let me just pause and see if we had the list that shows what was on the original ordinance and what would be done if we go forward with this idea, and what would not be done if we went that path. So Doug or John, are you on, or do you have that list?
I didn't see them on there.
I don't see either one of them on. No.
Tom,
Right.
I asked you, did you make a decision on what the path will be made of? Is it going to be gravel? Is it going to be paved? Or
So the existing path basically is like a earthen. So I'm talking about the existing path now. Is earthen with like a gravel, kind of a relatively coarse gravel, but it's been pounded into the dirt over such a long period of time that it provides, I would call, like a semi-solid surface, and you could easily ride a bicycle across it. You could, in all likelihood, ride a tricycle along this pre-existing path. The new path would be similar in the sense that it would have a layer of material, like, I don't even know what to call it. I would call it QP, or quarry product, but that may not be the right term for it, but very fine grained surface. And then on top of that, a very, very fine gravel that would give you both the ability to absorb water through it, but also a surface that would be basically sufficient for a bicycle to ride across. And it would be a relatively level surface. I actually sent pictures around. I don't know if I sent it to just the Public Works Committee, but there's a number of trails made in East Park over in Warren, New Jersey, with this same approach, where you have basically a sand, not like a QP type product, and then a fine gravel on top of it, and it's almost like a semi-paved surface.
Yeah, could you send? I think you didn't send it to everybody, just to the committee. If you would be able to distribute that, just so we can see what it looks like, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, I just happened to go for a walk in East Park one day when we were in the middle of the pandemic, and I thought, hey, these walkways are pretty nice, and it didn't look to me like it was a very expensive approach relative to, say, paving something or putting down cement.
So would you put this fine gravel over the existing earthen path as you described it already there? Because that gets very muddy if there's any rain at all.
Yeah.
No, the approach that we evaluated was basically adding 1/3 of a new path to the 2/3 of the existing path, creating a complete U from one end of the parking lot near the two baseball fields to the opposite side of the same parking lot. So we originally looked at making a complete loop, but there's a relatively steep slope right as you come out of the parking lot and you walk down to that first field. It's a relatively steep slope, and it was a significant cost to build up a retaining wall and a surface. And so we looked at that first, but it was getting into like the high six figures for even a low version of that. So we scaled back the project to try and keep it within the scope of what we had originally put in the ordinance in terms of funding.
Yeah, I think that's like a key point. So for me, I mean, we've got $65,000 remaining in the ordinance that was originally passed last year, and I think that the plans that we have, I know the engineer and Doug have worked hard on them, but they're underwhelming, to say the least. at least from my perspective, for the cost, at least that's being estimated as well. So that's a significant investment. And so what I had requested from the Public Works is if we could refer this to the Rec Committee as well, because the original walking path recommendation was provided by the ad hoc committee that was put together last year as well. I think it was in 2019. Was it 2019, Mayor? The ad hoc committee?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Rec Committee never really got any kind of input there. So I think it would be good to at least go to the Rec Committee, but I would really love public input and comments.
I can check with Anthony. I think it actually did at one point in the process between July and September. I think it did go to the Open Space Committee for their comment, and it went to the Rec Committee. I believe it did. And Anthony, we could check the minutes, but I think it did go to both those committees before it was finally voted on. I support what Councilwoman McCready's saying. I'd be happy to go ahead and get further input from the Rec Committee this year. That's not a problem in my perspective. But what I would propose is that we authorize our staff to do an RFP, which should be a minimal cost for us to get quotes now. And we aren't committed to do anything just by going down the RFP path. But if we wait and we only have one meeting in July and then one meeting in August, and we delay this, then there's really no opportunity to build it this year. And I think given the situation with COVID, I think it's worth moving these processes in parallel. And when we get to the actual commitment of funding stage, then we can debate the pros and cons, the design and the cost, I think fully. But I would propose tonight that we direct staff to move forward with an RFP on this, because it doesn't commit us to anything, but it does give us the option. And if we don't do that, I'm afraid we're going to run out of time. And that's my point.
Yeah. So Tom, I hear you. And so just a little bit more of information. So there were actually originally 3 different options that were proposed by engineering and Public Works. And then we had asked them to go back because they were all extremely cost prohibitive, at least what was in the budget. And so then they came back with a 4th option. And so we actually even talked about at Public Works to see if we should put all of these options out to bid and see what type of responses we get. Because right now we only have like the engineer's estimates. We did get one estimate from a local provider that would bid on the project just to get an actual estimate. So that was good to see those more real numbers, if you will. But I don't think we really came to a conclusion on which options we would go out to bid for when we talked, Tom, right?
Well, when we met at the field, I think we had said that we were looking at the least expensive option because it was within the funding that was already allocated. If it's not cost prohibitive to do RFP for multiple different designs, I don't have any problem with that either.
Yeah, I think Doug didn't say it would be so cost prohibitive to do more, because I think my hope is that some local person to Bernardsville will come in and say, we want to do this, and maybe the engineer's estimates are a little high, and maybe somebody will come in and say, we'll do this plan for less than was originally quoted, but still within what our money is to spend.
I think one of the things you have to realize, which always kind of blows people's minds on the cost of projects for schools or municipalities, is we have to pay prevailing wage. And that always makes a project more expensive. It's not our choice, but it's what the state tells us we have to do. So yes,
this project also didn't include just the pathway. There's drainage related to it, which is expensive, and they're going to excavate. They're going to put in foundational materials and then resurface. But I do agree that obviously we want to make sure we get the best price. So
understanding the prevailing wage. Sorry, I was just agreeing with Councilwoman McCready. Understanding the prevailing wage issue. If it was a local provider, is there a way that we can hire them for prevailing wage, and then they could donate other services to supplement?
Yes, as long as they pay their employees prevailing wage.
Yeah, that's what I meant. They could bid what they feel is right for the job.
Yeah.
They could take the haircut a little bit and not lose any money, but not make a big profit. I think that's a really good plan that Councilwoman McCready has. I think if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yes.
So I think it would be good to know, and I think I do agree with Councilman O'Day. It would be a shame to drag this on into 2021 as well. We've been talking about this actually for a long time, even before I joined the council. And I think it would be really value added to our recreation department and our offerings.
So I would suggest that we get an RFP out there as broad as possible and publicly ask, especially if there's a local contractor that's willing and interested in contributing to the town, that they find that they reply and find a way to make it as beneficial as possible.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to consider that has been mentioned, and I think it was actually Mr. Hoppy, the athletic director for the high school, that there's only 2 90-foot baseball fields in town, one at the high school and one at Polo. And the one at Polo actually is not a, I don't want to say not legitimate. That's the only word that's coming to my head, though. Not regulation.
Doesn't have a fence.
Not regulation.
Regulation.
So thank you. It doesn't go the 325 feet or whatever it is in the left field and things like that. And it's because it goes into the wetlands area that's back there. And so that would require us to get an NJDEP permit and all of this other stuff that we would have to end up doing, which is cost prohibitive according to Public Works. So I just wanted to mention that because I know that might be some feedback or whatever that we hear from the public. And I think it was mentioned it could cost, $15,000 or more just to apply for the permits and see what we could do in order to make that a regulation field. So, I mean, just another piece of information that we talked about so that the public is aware that at least it was discussed.
Yeah. I don't think the designs for the pathway that we discussed, any of them, from the more expensive ones to the lesser expensive one, would accomplish that, right?
Correct.
Just so everybody's clear on that.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that was my point. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I don't think I actually
Jack,
said that.
Can
And
we
the
do a
drainage.
resolution to authorize Public Works to put an RFP out?
Well, it actually has to be a formal notice to bidders in light of the dollars involved. But I think you can just do it by motion tonight. You could authorize.
Just to authorize them to
go out to bid.
write the bids.
And include various options, alternate bids.
Right. Okay.
So I move that we direct the Public Works staff to go out to bid and collect feedback on the different options that were reviewed in the Public Works Committee for a pathway around the polo grounds.
I second.
Voice vote is.
Voice vote. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? No? Okay. Good. We'll
I
get
know,
that started.
yeah, Mayor, sorry, I know you're trying to move us on. But I just wanted to make one more point about the drainage. So, I mean, the drainage that's proposed in these current plans is not 100% foolproof. They are going to do what they can to get the perforated pipes and stone and all that stuff in there. And we're hoping that, it can be helpful, but we thought it was at least a start rather than doing trying to do investment in what would be considered or thought to be a full-blown drainage fix, and maybe it doesn't actually fix it. So we thought it was a good first step.
Right, like one of the
Depth or drainage for the dugouts? I know we had.
no, it's drainage for the field, like what's basically left field for the baseball field. It's the further one back.
Yeah.
So the left field is kind of moist, especially after a rain. It's actually soaking wet. So the concept was to put in this drainage, and I think to Councilwoman McCready's point, it's not necessarily going to fix 100% of the problem, but we thought, this fits in the budget, what we proposed, or what was proposed in one of the designs. I think all the designs actually. And it was thought, let's see how that works. And then if we need to add to it a little bit in the future, we only add to it if we need to. We don't, over design it from the beginning. And I think that it will make a significant difference in the location that it's put in, because the location that they're addressing obviously is where the worst problem is.
Okay, good.
Just one other thing. I think you had asked Tom, about the ordinance where the connector path at Polo was included, and that was in 2019 ordinance 1812, and it's 146,000, but it includes a lot of other stuff. Some of this has already been discussed in, I believe all of this was discussed in rec committee back in 2019, but it was lights at Veterans Field, lower Polo drainage, which some of that already has been done near the dugouts of that 90-foot baseball field. And then connecting path at Polo is the next item. Dog stations, some storage upgrades, which I think after numerous discussions, we aren't doing that at the moment. And the
I think those storage upgrades were related to the lighting, which we pulled.
Yep.
Right. So in any case, that's the ordinance. If you want to refer to it, it's 1812.
And wasn't there some handicap?
Yeah, that's on here too.
Yeah.
Well, what was the handicap? Was that
It
for
just
the
says
walking path?
handicap access to fields.
Well, that was the point of the walking path, was that you could roll a wheelchair around to get to the far fields. Because right now you have to walk kind of on uneven ground.
Yeah. So the other thing we talked about was, we can take these initial steps toward this connecting path, and that doesn't preclude us from building on it at a later time. We can always improve on what we do. It's not like what we do now has to be started from scratch. It's, if a year from now we decide to invest more in this, it can be done. It's just, trying to be prudent and not, get something that's walkable now for the public, or as soon as possible with what we've already budgeted, which would make sense.
Yeah. I mean, this would just be very finely crushed stone.
Mm-hmm.
So you could probably push a wheelchair over it, but it'll be.
I actually sent a picture to everybody now. So while we were talking, I sent another email with the photographs. So if any of the council members want to look, they should have it in their email now, what the path at East Park in Warren, New Jersey looks like. The last thing was that Doug Walker suggested, and I believe he's directed or requested, that Public Works would cut with their lawnmower close to the ground a pathway to represent where this would go. And that would just be cutting the grass super low in the area where the pathway would be. And so then council members or the public could go over and look at the location, the proposed location. And, we could see what it might look like, or at least where it would be situated visually. And so that just would be something people could do next week.
Yeah, that's good, Tom. Yeah. And Bob, I see that you're on. I had asked Doug about the depth of the, where the drainage would be, like how far down we would dig, but he didn't know the answer to that. Do you know?
Bob who?
I thought the engineer was on.
No, he's not.
No. Okay. Wrong,
Oh,
Bob.
that's
Sorry.
the attorney.
Thanks. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm waiting on
put
the
on the
answer to that
path.
one still.
I just want to make sure, because there was some, the last comment that was said that about the gravel, that it needs to be wheelchair accessible. The wheelchair has to pass on it, because that was the whole rationale for starting to do it, was to make it accessible. And then we added on the fact that people could learn how to ride their bicycle on it. But the whole, raison d'etre was to make it accessible for handicapped folks to be able to see their kids or grandkids play.
Yeah. So
Yes.
we're trying to get to that point. That's what we're working towards.
Okay.
And we will get there, but maybe not in stage one with what we have to work with, I guess.
Well, well, that's something for another day. I don't want to prolong this meeting, but I think the time difference between stage 1 and stage 2 could be 5 or 10 years. So we really ought to make sure that we're doing this right the first time.
Yeah, well, I think in whatever product you're putting down will be accessible, right? I mean, you can.
I think
It's accessible. It may not be ideal. It's not going to be like smooth, flat road.
I got
in
that.
the, you know,
And
initial
it doesn't
phase.
have to be, but if it's
Yeah.
not, if it's not traversable, it's not worth doing.
Yeah, if you can't wheel on it, get a wheel on it.
I think if you take a look at the photos that I just sent, it to me looks, and I'm not an expert on ADA accessibility. It looks to me like it would be achievable, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and if you think about the, you know, the existing path that's there, which we're not going to touch in any way. I think somebody mentioned it before, it gets super muddy, and if there's rain, then you're not, you know.
Yeah, I was out there myself, not on the rainiest day of the year, but on a rainy day when the rest of the field was soaking wet and the path was easily traversable. And I walked on in the field where the drainage is going to be improved, and it was soaking wet back there, and the pathway was definitely not muddy and easily traversable on that particular day that I was there.
Yeah, that's good to know. At least maybe we should ask.
Yeah, so it might get muddy, but it probably would have to rain a heck of a lot for the existing pathway to get muddy. It's got enough stone where it's better than just a dirt path for sure.
Yeah. So when this goes to rec committee and public, you know, it would be good to hear from, you know, I mean, I realize like a normal bike, mountain bike or whatever could probably ride on it, and maybe even like a, you know, one of those like beach cruisers. But, you know, if a kid's trying to learn how to ride a bike, or if they're, you know, with training wheels, I don't know. And the, you know, wheelchair, I'm not sure either. So it would be good to, you know, check that out and see, especially if we're going to move forward. It's a lot of money, $65,000.
Well, can we put that in the bid specs, that whatever product has to be accessible?
I think we want to make sure we're not mixing subjects here, because the pre-existing path, which is 2/3 of this loop, it's not a loop, it's a U shape. 2/3 of the U shape is pre-existing path, which under any circumstances, under any RFP, will not change. That's not where nobody's talking about redoing the existing path.
Well,
it's
that
just the new section.
Part of the other,
I'm sorry, for the $200,000 option, I think it did. There were some very high-end options, maybe it did. But if we're going to talk about traversability or accessibility, I think we should talk about it in the sense of the pre-existing path is what it is, and then the new path, I think, is going to be equal or better than the pre-existing path.
But if you start with the new path being accessible, then whenever we have the money to finish, like Christine was saying, you just use that same material to finish at some point.
Right. I just think that I can't put my hand over my heart and say that meets ADA requirements for accessibility. But the question is, you know, is it actually accessible? I haven't read the ADA standards. I can't put my hand on my heart and say that the design is ADA compliant. But it's certainly
what we're dealing with. And to the mayor's point, if we put it in the RFP that it's wheelchair usable, then, you know, if we get a whole bunch of bids that are over 150,000, then we know that this can't be done right now.
Exactly.
It be deferred. I think we need to ask the right question up front.
I think the spec needs to be approved by Bob Brightly ahead of time to make sure it is wheelchair accessible. Because as I say, this has got to be a formal bid as opposed to an RFP. So I think our specs have to be specific enough to require that.
Okay, good. Okay, Jeff Price, I saw you here. Anyone have any questions for Jeff on the housing and zoning or comments? No? Okay. Jeff, did you want to add anything, or you have anything to add to your report?
Well, no, not really. Good evening. We're back working full time in the office. We've started doing all our housing inspections again, but the reports that you have in front of you are, of course, from May. So that only shows zoning, tree violations, and a couple of inspections that we did just to try our new system out, which is working very well.
That's using the iPad?
That's correct, yes. Yeah, we have an iPad in the vehicle and an iPad that's taken into the property for the inspection by the landlord or by somebody who was designated by the landlord.
Right. And Jeff, how many applications for outdoor dining did you get? Do you remember?
Yes. Yeah, because it's an unlucky number. It was 13.
13? And were they all approved? Or?
Yeah, they were all processed by myself, Glenn Miller, and the chief, and they were all issued last week.
Yeah. So Jeff, I mean, I think I've been down there walking around, talking to owners. I think I hope they're happy. Jeff, chief, thank you. We asked you to do a lot in a short period of time, so we really appreciate you getting the town up and running that way.
And Glenn Miller too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Glenn, yeah.
And Glenn, yep.
Yeah.
Can we I don't know, support publication of who's got these permits? Because I mean, it's just like free advertisement for them. Is there any way to do that, or is it appropriate for us to do that?
Well, I was asked by the Bernardsville News to provide a list of ongoing and approvals, so I did that during the course of last week, so they do have it.
Okay, maybe I don't know if we could ask Chris D'Amato to publish it on our website.
Yeah.
Public information.
Yeah.
Town Facebook page too, I think.
Yeah, I mean, just maybe it helps people know what's going to be open or is already open.
Yeah.
I can do
That's
that.
Mayor's update.
Yep. We can
And
do
I
that.
don't see Charlie or anybody from the news.
Oh, Charlie's here.
Charlie's there. Charlie, if you're listening.
Yeah. Little free advertising. Like. Okay. No, thank you. That was great that we moved that along so quickly. I think that the restaurants are very happy too. And we had a conversation with one of the governor's office people who said they're now working on indoor, probably a 25% capacity for indoor dining. So that may be coming up in the next week.
I thought I saw something official through a channel today. Maybe I'm losing my mind.
I saw it in the news. It was going to be July 2nd.
July 2nd, yeah.
It'll be 25%, which is not much, but it's something. Anyway.
Well, the good news is if you add the 25% with the expanded capacity outside that we just were able to do, I think we're getting somewhere.
Yeah.
I just feel bad for these workers. They all have to wear masks and all the patrons are not.
I know.
Seems counterintuitive. I feel terrible for them, especially in this heat lately.
Good tips.
Yeah, God.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
yes, tip
Good
well.
tips.
Not worth it.
just to add one more thing, the Bernards Health Department also signed off on all 13 of the permits.
Oh, good. Okay. Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Did anybody have council liaison reports for committee?
Yeah, I've got finance and also the housing zoning.
Finance.
I'm not finance. I'm losing my mind. It's been a long day. Planning board.
Planning board. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All right. So the first thing with the housing zoning, Mr. Pigeon, I need to talk to you in the morning. We have the rental consolidated ordinance, which is the consolidated Bernardsville Property Maintenance Code, which is done with the exception of the fees and minimum penalties section. So if it's permissible with you, I'll give you a call tomorrow.
Of course.
Resolve that and get that on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. I'll move from there quickly to the planning board. Good news. 2 Thursdays ago, we finished the zoning overlay as a group for the downtown Bernardsville project, the revitalization project. So next steps with that, John Zabo is doing a consistency check, incorporating all final comments, and bringing it back to the planning board. I want to say the July 6th meeting, assuming that it gets passed without changes or minimal changes. We will have it in front of us very soon, along with the signing ordinance. That brings the next big piece of, I guess it's a combination of a report, but new business. We have various pieces of ordinances as well as guidances that need to be harmonized, probably through working meeting. So I don't know if everybody wants to wait until after the 6th to start planning those working meetings, or if we want to put them on the books now. But we have to review items such as this ordinance, the property maintenance guide, Mayor, help me with some of these items because there's a long list, and off the top of my head, there's about 6 or 7 different documents we need to harmonize, make sure we thoroughly understand, and make sure that we codify as appropriate to make sure that we give the guidance that we need to. So we can either schedule those working meetings now, or we can wait till the next meeting to schedule them. And that's all I have from those two.
Okay. Why don't we, wait till we get the things back from zoning, to have that overlay completed.
Okay.
And then go from there, because I think that's going to affect everything else.
Yes.
So hopefully that'll come back next month, and then maybe later in July we could do something.
Good.
Okay. Anybody, Jeff, did you have any committee?
Yeah, just the report on the library. All the advanced planning we had done had paid off. The library opened up as much as it can for curbside function, and things have been really well. People are very happy. We had one person that we had one whole FTE who did nothing but handle the books that had been requested on hold to get them ready to give out. There was a market uptick in research questions and electronic use of the library. We have over 4,000 books that are out that have to be returned, and just in one day, 250 of them were dropped off. So things are really rolling. The libraries, the personnel are very happy. The people who have partaken of it are very happy. And I think it really speaks to all the planning that went into preparation for this. As far as the green team, we haven't met. I'll just mention I did have a chance to talk to the chair, Bob Baker, at the farmers market, and the farmers market's going really well. The location at the pool has been very favorable, but we're gearing up to return to the train station after July 1. But we don't have any definitive plans, but there's some discussion about what other outdoor activities the green team might be able to sponsor in the fall.
Okay, great. Anybody else?
I wanted to talk about the shade tree. I guess John's not here, but on the 10th, we gave away 500 trees at the pool parking lot to many residents who pulled up. We did a great job of no contact pickup of trees for people to plant. So 500 is a great number. It's the most we've ever given out, I think. And a lot of volunteers pitched in for that from Shade Tree and from zoning, which was great. And the Cultural Arts Committee met this week. We talked about some of the plans for the mural being postponed and how we're going to handle that going forward. So that's a plan for us for the upcoming months. And if I missed anything, Mayor, you'll probably talk about it in your update.
I will.
And that was it for me.
Okay. Gina, did you have something?
Well, the Board of Health hasn't met, so nothing there. In the rec, we talked about quite a bit. The only thing I wanted to add is that the swim team registration is now open, because that wasn't originally open when registration went out. There were emails that were sent, but just in case people aren't on the existing emails, the swim team is now open and ready for open registrations. And the team is on target for a July 6th opening for the pool. They ran into a couple snags when they first started to open, a couple burst pipes that had that were leaking, but they were able to fix those. And then they're skipping a couple of steps that weren't 100% necessary. So they are targeting for July 6th still. But if they can get open earlier and, kind of fingers crossed for the July 3rd, 4th holiday, they're working like crazy to make that happen. And I know there's a ton of residents and also rec committee members who have been working a lot of hours behind the scenes, Neil especially, of course, and Ted as the chair, to get this pool up and running, and Lou Romano has been helping as well. So they're really trying hard. But so Jeff, I wanted to double check with you. The farmers market, is it on July 4th at the pool? It's the week
No.
before that it ends at.
Yeah, it's one way. It's just this coming Saturday, and then that's it.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, they're definitely not going to make that. So the farmers market should be clear, but they are really trying their best to get it open as early as possible. So everybody just stay tuned.
But I think we all owe them a debt of gratitude for the effort that they're putting in. It really is it's a big task that we laid before them, and everything I've heard so far is very complimentary.
Yeah, absolutely. Neil has been doing a great job, and now Bob has started last Wednesday. So now he's in the thick of things as well, getting feet right in the fire for sure.
He gets to jump in at the deep end of the pool, right?
But I'm
Not from the diving board.
just not from the diving board. Right?
Okay, we had a request for a parking decal refund. I think we had asked Anthony to get some more information on that. And then I see we also are wanted to redo the ordinance so we have a policy, because that was the problem we ran into, is having some kind of policy in place as to how we do refunds. So Jack, did you have input on that?
No, just that the current ordinance says that if you buy it after July 1st, that it's half price. But there is no, historically, the policy of the council has been not to give any refunds except in extraordinary circumstances. So I guess the issue is whether you want to permanently change the ordinance or whether just during this COVID-19 period to grant exceptions.
So there's nothing in there at all about refunds.
No.
No language.
And Anthony, you said we had maybe 80 decals sold. Is that right?
That's about, yes, that's correct.
So council, what's your pleasure on this?
Well, I have one point that I feel pretty strongly about, and that's that we should not refund anything proactively. So, a date of a refund request should be the earliest that we would consider a refund for. In other words, if somebody says, I'd like my refund for this year, I didn't use it since January, I don't think we should be retroactive that way. But if a request came in on, say, June 1st, I'd be willing to discuss considering it from June 1st going forward, from the date that the request was received, or the date that the decals is turned back in, or whatever you want to say. And I would propose that if we do make an exception, it's for COVID-19, not a hardship exception. It's a COVID-19 related exception.
Anyone else?
I agree with that. I think if we prorate it and then make it for a specific exception, which a lot of things are being done now in the name of COVID-19. I think that would be a fair thing to do. I agree with Councilman O'Day.
And so do I. I think we should at least make an effort to empathize a little bit with these people who lost their jobs, especially this one who came forward.
But it's effective the day they requested. Tom, is that what you're recommending?
Well, I mean, the only thing we would want to do is we wouldn't want to refund somebody and then they could continue to use the decal or have used it in the past. So, my point being is if somebody says on June 1st, I haven't used it since February, I think we should consider it from the date that the request was put in. And then I don't know if we need to get the decal back, because can they still use it if we give them a refund?
What I can do is I can tell the police department to void that number, and I will ask for the decal back if you do, wind up giving a refund. I can do both of those things.
So do you remember what the date on this particular request was?
It was June 1st. I just looked it up on my computer, and the original request came in on June 1st.
So if we rate it?
And that's the way businesses generally do it. If you call, a vendor that you've made a recurring purchase with, and say, I've stopped using it, they'll stop it at that point, but not 2 months before. So
if everybody else is comfortable with that approach, I guess we could do that. and I would call it a COVID-19 exception. It's
Or a
not.
job loss, if you lost your job. Which
Well, no,
This person has not lost their job, so I think we need to be careful there.
Yeah, let's just make it a
They
code.
said they were on reduced hours, and they said that it was related to COVID-19. So what I'm saying though is that it wouldn't bind us in the future making exceptions. Like, we're not setting a precedent that we're making an exception because a person has a hardship. We're making an exception because it's COVID-19. And if you're going to turn your decal back in during this period, then will we consider that as an exception?
Jack, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say, if that's the consensus of the council, I don't think we have to amend the ordinance.
Okay.
It could just be the policy during this COVID-19 period.
All right.
Yeah.
We all good with that?
Yep.
Do we need to do anything
I just
official?
want to, sorry, Mayor, I just want to be clear on the amount that we're giving back since it's June 1st. Is that a month's worth of a refund, or I guess 3 weeks? I just want to be clear on the amount that we're giving back of the refund.
Well, they paid for a year, yes? From
7/12.
7.
7/12.
I'm sorry, I thought you were giving it back from the point of the email, which was June 1st. But you're
Right. So it'd be 7 months refund.
7 months. I got you. Okay. Okay. So it's from June to the end of December. Okay, I misunderstood. Sorry about that. Okay.
They go from January 1 to December 31st?
Yes. December
Yes.
31st. Yeah. Okay. I misunderstood that. Okay, got it.
All right, good. 10C, we have the student parking at the library. I believe we've always given them 10 spots.
I'm sorry, Mayor. Was 10B a refund policy for future?
Well, that's what Jack said. We didn't need to change it.
Oh, because what I wanted to say was, I think this year is unique. I think for next year, we ought to offer full year, 6 month, 3 month, and monthly passes at, increasingly more expensive, and then don't offer any refunds. So if somebody wants to buy the flexibility of a month by month pass, let them buy the flexibility and pay an incremental amount. If they want to get the deepest discount, they can buy a 1 year, but they're not going to get a refund if they don't use it. I think that should be our policy going forward. And we offer them flexibility in terms of what they want to buy. So if it's $250 for a year, maybe it's, $150 for every 6 months or some other number. And then, if you want it, a quarterly or a monthly pass, it goes up. So you pay for the flexibility and there are no refunds.
Well, it might be hard. I'm just thinking maybe we should let Public Works look at that because it might be difficult to enforce that. You have to have different colors for different types so that the police know whether it's run out, it's a 3 month, it's a 6 month. I'm just.
Mayor, that's a good point. So if my idea doesn't go through because it's too complex, then we should just set a refund policy for next year.
So let's have Public Works talk about that and see what the enforcement issues might be around that. I think it's a great idea. It's just whether or not we can enforce
I agree. We should do what's easy for us to do rather than, but I just think we should have a policy in place so that we don't have to debate whether or not we give refunds in the future.
Yeah.
But as I say, in the past, the policy was no refunds.
Right.
Right, but then, we only offer one.
Your prerogative.
And I'm comfortable with no refunds, but if the only option is I buy a year or I buy nothing, I pay daily or yearly. Those are two pretty broad differences,
Mm-hmm.
But then I think if we're going to have no refunds, if that's going to be the policy, maybe we need to think about something between you can either have daily parking or pay for a year. There's nothing else in between,
I think they can manage those partial splits of a year. I mean, they can look at your registration tag and see different colors, and I don't think that would be a burden. I mean, the Public Works Committee can consider it. I think this is doable. I like that.
I think this is a problem that's been solved before.
Yeah, we'll take it to Public Works and we'll come back with a recommendation for the full council.
Yeah, or maybe, write up the wording so that it's clear as to how it should be implemented.
Understood. Yeah, we should do it that way. It's not waste our time tonight.
Yeah. Well, what happens, Anthony, today if I wanted to, get a permit in June?
If you bought it today, you would have to pay the $300. If you
full
came
fee
in from July
regardless.
1st, yeah, if you came in from July 1st on, it'd be $150.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, July 1st. Okay.
Yeah. So if you waited a couple weeks, you would get the $150 off.
Got it. Okay.
But there used to be a time when they were all sold out.
That's
So
right.
by
There's a
waiting a half year,
waiting
Yeah.
list.
you might not get one. So.
Yep.
10D, we have the appeal process for the approval denial of tree removal permits. And this, I think, Jack, you said we've never had an appeal before from a.
Yeah. In the 20 years or so since the ordinance was adopted, there's never been an appeal. And I think even then it was anticipated an appeal would be by a property owner whose application was denied.
Right.
But this is by a neighbor. And when I went and looked at the appeal process in the ordinance, it's more burdensome than an appeal from a planning board decision. At this point, it requires that the initial step of the appeal is through the full shade tree committee, and then it goes to the council. The appellant has to give notice to all property owners within 200 feet, like a zoning appeal.
Wow.
And it just strikes me as being overkill for a tree removal permit. I would suggest we make it that there can be an appeal to the shade tree committee, maybe with notice to the immediate neighbors. And after that, you go to court. Same way, if you appeal from a planning board decision, you have to go to court. It doesn't come to the council. The only thing that comes to the council in the planning and zoning area is the approval of a D variance by the Board of Adjustment goes to the council, but the appellant has the option to go straight to court. But I hate to make this more onerous for the council than a site plan approval.
John, so if somebody's removing trees on their property,
yes,
and I'm assuming so, it's being done within the
They've got
jurisdiction that they have within the laws. Is there even an appeal that's? And I know nothing about this case, but is this even appealable?
Well, the ordinance has an appeal process, and as I say, it's really overkill. It's more complicated than an appeal from a planning board decision.
So what this case is someone is doing some tree removals with approval of the Shade Tree Commission. But
in my opinion, it's their property, and
neighbor is still saying, we don't like it, even though it's been approved.
The neighbor is opposed to.
And again, I know nothing about it, but the neighbor can plant a tree. To me, this is none of the neighbor's business.
Well, the problem is we have an ordinance in place that has this appeal process. And
they filed.
It sounds like you disagree with the entire philosophy of the tree.
I do.
Which is fine.
So you're asking me to change an appeal process from one that's and my fundamental opinion is no, they have no right to. So make it as hard as possible.
Well, I'll disagree with you there. I think if let's just say, for the sake of argument, somebody's got an acre plot and they cut down every single tree there, and it may actually have a negative impact on the neighborhood. And
that wouldn't be within.
Let me finish.
Sorry,
property value can suffer, and that we have a property maintenance ordinance that tells people what they should and should not do. I don't see a shade tree ordinance being that much different.
I agree with you, but that's why we've limited tree removals in the way that we have, right? To prevent what you're recommending.
In other words, if the shade tree approved it, now the neighbor's appealing it. So if they've seen it and they know their ordinance and what people are allowed to do, and they've said okay.
Well, actually, it's an appeal from the decision by the tree conservation officer. So as I say, step one is to the shade tree committee, which makes perfect sense. You go to the full committee. My issue is with whether it goes to the council with notice to all property owners within 200 feet, and we have to conduct a full-blown trial on the issuance of a tree permit. Seems to me more appropriate. That's why courts exist.
Costs $25.
They exist for planning board decisions. Why change it for a tree removal permit?
Take out the council piece. How's that?
I was trying to say that diplomatically.
Yes. In other words, we don't need to have a trial here on our level.
It's really overkill, in my opinion. So I will draft an ordinance for your consideration for the next meeting.
But does that, this current appeal though, because it was, we have to do this process?
Yes.
So we're gonna have to do this. Okay.
Well, but it's
All right.
going to the Shade Tree Commission first.
Yeah,
Correct.
and maybe they might get resolved there, and so it may never come to us. But right now, if they go to the next step, it will. Okay. And all right. So the next is 10E. This was the request.
You skipped over student parking, 10C.
No, I mean we said. Oh, I said it. Did we
I
not-
interrupted you, Mayor. I interrupted you before we finished. Sorry.
It's okay, Councilman OJ. It's okay. I missed that. Okay, so we had 10 spots at the library. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And are we good with that? Usually they ask for more and we always only give them 10.
I think they're not asking for more. Let's just go with it.
Yep.
We good with that? With the 10 spots? Yes?
Yes.
I mean, how many spots do they have at the school?
Not enough, evidently, for everybody
Oh,
who drives.
really? Apparently, but yeah,
Yeah, they
curious.
park all the way up Olcott as well. So, and I'm not sure how they assign them, but I think 10 is good.
Can we give them a contingent approval saying that they can have the 10 spots unless we have some, issue with COVID-19 and we need the space for something else? Just this particular year, maybe we need to have a caveat in the agreement that just says unless COVID-19 considerations require us to rescind those spots.
But Jack, I think we can do that anyway without having to make it formal, can we?
But we could just communicate it to them that they've got our agreement, unless unforeseen circumstances. So they're aware that we might pull it, but we're not intending to do that.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, sorry about that. So we did 10D. So now we're up to 10E, which is the moratorium on hardscrabble. They, and I think we had all the details of what the new fees are.
Mhm.
So it's whether or not we want to grant the exemption.
But in this case, they would be paying for the newly revised requirements, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, because we've already put those in place. So they'd have the repaving costs and all that. So are we okay with allowing them to do this?
Yes.
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 Yeah.
Okay, do we need a resolution, Jack, or no? Right, you're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I would do a motion just so it's in the record.
Someone like to move this?
I move that we grant the exception for a moratorium for road opening on 360 Hardscrabble Road per the attached documentation.
Second.
Voice vote's fine.
All in
Voice
favor?
vote.
Aye.
Aye.
All right. No nays, we're good. Okay. We have 10F, appointing Jeff Horowitz to the Housing Committee. I believe this was Sam Mataluna's suggestion. We've had a hard time getting people on that committee because it meets at usually, what is it, 3:30?
Yep.
So, and we're very short on membership, so anybody we can get. And Jeff's on the planning
That's
board.
great.
Got
Yep.
a good background in zoning, and I think he'd be very useful. So,
Yeah, I think it would be a nice arch into zoning too, to be honest.
yeah.
So
So do we need a council
Yeah.
resolution? Yes.
So,
So,
you need a motion because it's a mayor's appointment with council consent. We just need a motion.
so
yeah, I'll move to add Jeff to the housing and zoning.
I'll second it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
How many open spots do we have on the Housing and Zoning Advisory Committee?
I think it says 7 to 12, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. I think maybe we have,
It's 4 to 8.
oh, it's 4 to 8. Why
Yeah,
not?
it's 4 to 8, and we have that's not counting the council members. So we have 7 right now. So he'll be 8, and he'll make it full. So
Oh, good. Okay.
that'll be the last one.
Is there anybody who is living in affordable housing who's on the committee?
What, I missed something there.
I said, is there any member of the committee who's actually living in affordable housing?
In affordable?
I'm just curious. We were talking about diversity earlier today.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you
It's
can.
a great question. I've never asked, but I think it's a good question. I would encourage if somebody is interested to join, because I think it would be a good addition if they don't exist already.
Well, we're full, so we would have to increase the membership. No?
No, we're full to the minimum number, not to the maximum.
Oh, okay.
No,
No,
No, we're full.
sorry. Yeah, we are.
Well, just to
Well,
revisit
8
what we
was the
talked about
max.
earlier, I think one of the things we should commit ourselves to is when we start appointing people to committees, we try to keep an eye to diversity.
I
absolutely.
think that's an admirable goal, that, you know, our committees are reflective of our community.
I agree.
Yep. 10G, 271 Mine Brook Road. We had asked for an estimate from the engineer for cost of dividing that property into 2 parcels or 3 parcels. So we did get 2 prices. The difference was about $1,000, I think, was it?
$525. It's about just over 10% difference in the price.
I thought it was more than that. Okay, I don't have it in front of me.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I thought that's what I read.
Yeah, no, it's 2,800 for the 2-division plat, and it's 3,100 for the 3-division plat. So it's
That wasn't the full cost, though, Councilman McQueen. If you read the email above it, when you add up all the costs, it was 4,800 versus 5,325. That's how I got the $525 difference. So when I read the email, there's actually a number of lines.
Oh, there it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's in an email above. I see it. Yep.
Okay, so the total price is 4,800 for the 2, or 5,325 if we do it into 3. So an extra $525 to get the 3rd plat, which, you know, we may or may not transmit to or sell. So the question is it
like I say, look, to do the 3 lot, it gives us options. It allows us to officially understand if the property is saleable at a price that's reasonable. I would suggest we do the 3.
I agree.
I think for $525, we should do the 3. And I agree that, you know, it may not actually occur, but, you know, we shouldn't preclude ourselves. If somebody wants to give us an attractive price on the property, then so be it.
Agreed.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Are we all good with that? Do we, Jack, do we need to authorize?
No, I think you've got a consensus.
Okay,
Anthony can just direct Bob Brightly to do it that way. And he's already under retainer, so
So 3 parcels.
3
Yes.
parts. Okay,
3 and 2.
yeah.
Oh, wait, I thought it was, we had to choose 3 or 2.
Oh, is that, wait a minute.
Yeah, no, it's 3. It's not and.
Yeah,
Unless I'm completely
we're going to
reading
do
it.
just the 3. He's going to just
Yes.
divide it into 3.
Okay. Yeah, I understand.
Okay. All right. Now we are up to mayor's update. Okay. Let's see, June 9th, I attended the County Planning Partners Forum and got to announce that we had done the complete streets policy. So that was well accepted. I think, Jeff, you were on that meeting as well. When they were talking about, you know, the bike paths and the whole process of redoing that, you know, the programs for older people and making towns walkable. So they've really done quite a bit on that in the county. June 9th, we had our Downtown Redevelopment Committee. So that was the first draft of Quimby. And so I have 3 of you that want to meet with Chris Colley. So I will let him know that. So far, I've been to 2 meetings of the Economic Recovery Task Force. That's the countywide Economic Recovery Task Force that the freeholders set up. And probably by the end of this month, we will make a report to the county, but it's really been interesting. I'm still catching up because I think there were 5 meetings before I was put on it. But they're really working on some creative ideas for stimulating economy and helping small businesses. So hopefully we'll have some good programs that our local businesses can take advantage of. We also had the feeding committee, the joint EMC OEM feeding committee meeting with the chief. That program is going very well. What's happening is as people go back to work, the volunteers are starting to dwindle. So the chief really has a call out for more volunteers. Anybody that who wants to either help with the pop-up food pantry or to get certified or work with shelters. We really want to get that list beefed up and get as many volunteers as we can. So anybody encourage them who's looking to do something for the town. We did, as Christine said, had a cultural arts committee meeting. We had not met just with COVID and regular craziness, and there wasn't a whole lot to do. Talked about the mural, and I think what we're going to do is postpone it to next May. We originally were thinking of doing it in September, but it still didn't allow enough time to really be able to do fundraising events and get the revenue that we need to get that done. So we are going to try and do it next May and get that going. We also are working on trying to make a video. We're going to be doing a short kind of commercial for Bernardsville. Why you should come here, why come visit Bernardsville. You're featuring some of the stores and restaurants that make Bernardsville attractive that we could give to some of the realtors and some of the commercial realtors to help promote the town for people that might be want to move here. So we have one of our committee members is a video guy, and he offered to do that for us. We're also trying to come up with fundraising ideas for the mural. My application to the DOT to close part of 202 was promptly denied. So I have sent that on to Senator Bucco to see if he could help with that at all. I had asked just for past Claremont to before Mount Airy, just that one section where there's 5 restaurants, so that we could make that a public space on Friday nights and let, maybe have some music and more tables out. And I didn't get a reason. I just got a prompt form letter. So
Is Quimby
prompt
Lane,
no.
not everybody at once.
is Quimby Lane under our purview, and could we, use that area?
The problem with closing Quimby Lane is there's still, businesses operating there that, people want to park in the post office or, and it didn't avail as many businesses. That section, there were 5 restaurants that are limited, where Quimby just really has fun now. So
I was gonna ask if if they denied Morristown too.
they did.
Because I saw in Morristown, they do have seating on 202. Or, I'm
24.
sorry, 24,
Yeah.
which is a state road. But they have it like near the creamery in parking spaces. And I took a picture of it to show it to you. They blocked off a few of those parking spaces, and they do have tables on it. So, I mean, not to rat them
Somerville
out,
too. Yeah, I think Somerville too for Route 28 though, no?
Yeah.
I think what we were talking about is different. We're talking about shutting down the entire road, not
Right.
just the parking spaces.
Yeah. I know with the parking spaces, I've talked to the chief about that, and he has a real safety problem with some of the parking spaces. They're hard to protect.
What about our earlier idea to use the tail end of the train station parking lot near the Fenwick Park?
That's still viable if,
The hard thing is you can't really do table service there.
No, it wouldn't be table service, but it would be takeaway. I think,
No, that option is currently available. Jeff and I were just talking about that. I forget, Jeff.
Didn't I read something about, open container laws being flexible for something like that?
So we could put somewhere between 12 and 13 tables in the little park area there. With the farmers market moving, I'm going to walk around next week and I'll just ask the local businesses what their capacity's been like and see if they need the overflow capacity or not.
Yeah, we had looked into doing that on weekends in the Milson Fenwick area.
Right.
In discussions with the chief, he really is very strong about not mixing people in cars. So we really don't want to use the north end of the parking lot. But, you know,
But did Chad
Chad and I walked it. We actually mapped out the Fenwick area, and you can easily get 9 to 10 tables there and keep everybody 6 feet apart. And in principle, the chief thought it was a good idea. We held off on trying to implement it for 2 reasons. One is the farmers market moved temporarily, and 2 is, as was mentioned, we wanted to see once we opened up outdoor dining, what the appetite for, that's a bad pun, what the appetite for having those extra tables are. But it's certainly a viable concept that's still in play.
I think let's put some tables out and just see if people utilize them. I mean, why not try it? I think we had this actual approach last year. Councilwoman Zamara promoted it, and we had 2 or 3 tables out there, you know, just for people to walk past and sit down for a few minutes if they felt like it.
Well, we did talk to one of the restaurateurs that was there, and of course they're going to be the ones putting out the tables and the chairs and picking them up. So these are not our tables. We have to make sure they're still willing to do that.
Unless we, as a borough, wanted to think of something more permanent there.
Well, I think the idea was good. I think we lost a table or something, or maybe some chairs from that area, which is why we didn't continue to approach.
You'd really have to bring them in every night. I don't think you want to leave them out. And we sometimes, you know, that's the question, is if you have portable things, people can walk off with them. And
wasn't that the problem last year?
Yeah. And if you do something permanent, then you kind of limit what else you can do in that space. Yeah. So, if somebody would have to put them out and take them back.
So I'm perfectly willing to go talk to a couple of the local restaurants, and I can ask, because they have to put them out and take them down themselves. I can ask if it's something that they're interested to do, and if it's something that they think would be of value.
We held off because we thought that they might have been so successful with the outdoor dining that they're not interested any longer.
Yeah. I know I personally went to a couple of restaurants this weekend, enjoyed their outdoor patios, and I don't think either of them was at capacity.
Okay.
Yeah, and people are still, not embracing it yet. They're being a little cautious. So.
And with that last statement, I know we have a bunch of people, we've lost a lot, but still 30 people online. Please go patronize our restaurants, because they need the service right now.
Yeah,
absolutely. The station, everybody's, obviously you should get reservations, but when we were there at the station, they started a wait list.
Yeah,
that was, I think,
Tuesday
Tuesday
night.
night.
In the evening, they're packed.
Yeah, that was a Tuesday night also.
Okay.
They've been doing great. Okay, so the other thing was, we talked about moving the vision plan to July 20th. I think I heard from Tom and Jeff, I'm not sure, and Gina, I think, said the 20th was the better day. Did I miss anybody?
You said the 30th or the 20th? I could do either.
There was a day before that too. It might have been July 6th or the 20th.
Yeah,
and I just said I prefer the 20th. Not
I can. Either's fine for me, Mayor.
Okay.
I can juggle things around.
Let's shoot for the 20th, and I'll make sure that we get that set up. The other thing I just wanted to, if you've seen the graduation banners and the marquee at the theater, the Public Works, John McDowell, did a fabulous job of getting those up. They were up this week. They'll be up next week. I think they come down on Friday, and then the veterans banners go back up again. So I think it was really nice. The school and the graduates really appreciated it. And thank you to Harvey Goldberg as well for letting us put the letters on the marquee.
And July 14th is the actual graduation. Is there limited attendance for that?
They're doing, I don't know what all the conditions are for the actual graduation. Anybody have any idea what they're doing? I don't know yet. Christine, you know anything?
I think I heard, but I'm not 100% sure that it's half and half, like 8 a.m. and then the rest. But I don't, honestly, I could be mixing schools up because I heard about so many different ones.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
And it changes every day.
I think it is limited, very limited.
Yeah. Okay, that was for me. Correspondence, I don't think we had any, Anthony, did we?
No, I didn't get any.
Okay. Any unfinished business?
Hey, I just like to make a quick statement. I'd like to go back to the resolution 177 we talked about, if I can. I just want to make sure that there's no misunderstanding on the part of the public, or for that matter, on the part of the press, about what we're doing. I wouldn't want to see a headline that says that the Bernardsville Council rejected an anti-racism resolution. That's not what we did. I think I don't think I'm overstepping my bounds if I say we as a council recognize the need that there are things that need to be done. We recognize that things can be done better. And we're committed to that. We actually passed a resolution at the last council meeting to recognize LGBT month that talked about inclusion and the dignity for all of our residents. So I think what we did was not reject the concept, but that we want to speak to this issue with our own voice and to construct our own action plans that are meaningful for Bernardsville.
No, I think we made that clear. Thank you. Thank you for stating it so well. Any other new business?
Nope. How about me?
Okay, so we are back to our second open session. So if anyone would like to speak, click on participants and then raise hand so that we know that you will talk. Limit your comments to 3 minutes, please. And actually identify yourself when you get on and where you live. Looking through.
Can anyone hear me?
Who is that?
Yeah, this is Janice Virtue. I'm not on video, so that you'll just hear my voice.
Oh, here it is. Janice's iPad too. I see it.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. So I just, first of all, I want to tell you that I appreciate all the effort that all the council members have put into being council members and working very, very well together. It appears to me that you really do work well together. I also listened to the comments that you made about the anti-racism resolution, and I found them to be reasonable. I do want to bring up a couple of points. And I guess, you know, this whole issue is multifaceted. What we saw over the past few weeks was not just one issue. It was a lot of different things going on. And I think we have to be very careful. And I don't think the council is doing this. I'm not accusing the council of this. But I do think we have to be careful not to demonize police as a group, because I know that there's not one police officer that wants to see any bad apples within their group. And not to say that you can't improve upon anything. Look at everything in life. You can look at everything and want to improve it, right? But I think we have to be very careful what's happening here. And, you know, police officers go out every single day. They hopefully come home at night, but sometimes they don't. And right now, you know, we don't want to hamstring them so they're afraid to do their jobs and protect people, which is why they're there. You know, the other thing is that, you know, we've had community policing in this town. I've lived here for 50 years, pretty much, almost. And, you know, my two boys were raised here in town. And, you know, police played an important role in their lives. And again, they were out in the community. They get to know the boys. You know, this town, you can't lump every town into one bucket. So, and I think I heard you say that, you know, this is our town. This is what we are and how we do things. So I get the sense that you're going to be careful about this. But I want you to know people want to be safe. They don't want police defunded. They don't want to just hamstring people, and we don't want, and really not to demonize police. I think that would be a wrong thing to do and very, very detrimental. So, you know, I guess that's my 2 cents here. And I I do want to, I hope that you really listen to what I'm saying. I think you will, but I wanted to put it out there very strongly. And I do want to give a shout out to the police in Bernardsville. You know, we're on your side and people do respect you. And I think it should remain that way. And if we want to make some changes to make things better here and there, but we have to be careful about what's happening here. And I guess that's it.
Okay, thank you, Janice.
Thank you, Janice.
Yeah, and I think we all agree that we happen to have an exceptional police force here.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. So thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else from the public want to be heard? Anthony, you seeing anybody?
No, I don't see anyone's hand raised.
I'll give it another minute. Okay, I will close the public session. And thank you for everyone who's been here all night. Thank you for participating in our process. So now we are going to adjourn to closed session. We do have some objects. Are we will reopen and adjourn. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Motion.
Executive. Do I have a
I'll
second?
second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Okay. So we will have just a brief break here.